You are listening to Ras Temari Radio, Offense This Here, where we discuss everything but politics. Welcome back to both Danny and Kidus. Hi, guys.
Great to be here.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Of course, thanks for having me at this point. I could easily, just as easily thank you for having me at this point. We were talking off the air about 90s cinema. We had some topics about 90s cinema, which is always our reference point, the three of us. I haven't had both of you on at the same time, which is going to be interesting.
It's a crossover episode.
Crossover episode. It's like when
Crossfaded.
The Simpsons met Family Guy, and the early one was the Jetsons met the Flintstones. You ever see that one? Like the future and the past. It was billed for. It was about 30
cinematic universe.
Yeah. Because like the Jetsons and the Flintstones were playing the same.
Except the opposite ends.
Except opposite, right? One was the Flintstones was in the past, and the Jetsons was like at the cutting edge of the future.
Yeah.
One of the original crossover cartoon. You don't only really do that in a cartoon, though, right? There's too much production involved
Otherwise, yeah. I guess it's about rights, though, when it comes to other TV shows. It's not like you can have...
Get closer to the mic. I don't think we can hear you. I'm not sure we can.
It's about rights, right?
Yeah.
I mean, for most TV shows, it's not about budget.
Yeah.
As long as they're in the same production company, then
Right.
they would love to have a crossover episode, yeah.
Yeah. You usually don't see competing
No,
worlds having
exactly.
crossover episodes.
Yeah.
Danny, what is something that you taught yourself recently? You have a theory on one of our favorite 90s classics, which is Pulp Fiction.
Yeah.
Tarantino.
Yeah. So, okay. This is my theory on Pulp Fiction. Pulp Fiction. Okay, whenever... So, I teach documentary. I went to film school. I'm a movie lover.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Cinephile. Free cinephiles.
Yeah. So I always ask myself if I love a movie, especially if I love it repeatedly, like it's to me when it achieves timelessness.
Me love you long time. Kind of thing.
Shut up. That's like the highest quality a movie
So
can.
when I love it, for
when you keep going back to it, right, and it gets better every time. So Pulp Fiction meets that standard for me. It's like one of the greats. And I have my issues with Tarantino sometimes. I think he goes a little over the top. But
Yes.
Pulp Fiction, and I have to say Jackie Brown is my number one. I'll say that, talk about that later.
Right. I want to hear.
So, but anyway, Pulp Fiction is obviously one of the greats. Maybe one of his, most people would say it's probably his greatest movie.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, it's
Consensus, I think, yeah.
Yeah.
A lot of people love Inglourious Bastards, which I don't quite get.
I love Inglourious Bastards.
That's also a great film, but Pulp Fiction beats it by...
Right.
Yeah.
I think so, too.
So I always ask myself, why is this so, not just like how is it good, but why is it resonating? Like, why do you think about it after, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
What is it? Because it's connecting with something in you.
Right,
The
which
thing-
you can't tell. We were talking this with Lebowski. The greatest films are the films that you love and you can't tell why.
Yeah.
It's like, why do I love this film? Why is
Right.
it so
I mean,
great?
it's not like the story's that amazing. So it's the story. One is the storytelling. That's kind of the how it's done. But there's also, I believe that there is, and George Lucas tried to do this intentionally. There is something about these stories that last, that connects with your human experience, and the really great ones connect with something that's usually kind of a universal human experience. That's why he consulted. I'm talking about George Lucas now. He consulted Man of a
Saga and something.
Yeah,
there's
a guy named Fraser who wrote Hero of a Thousand Faces, which basically says there's this monomyth that goes through all the great epic traditions and old myths and stories, and they even teach this now in Hollywood and film schools. There's this structure.
Right, the individual life cycle.
Yeah, you start on Tatooine, you're like a neophyte, you're a kind of a kid, then you go into this kind of green world. That's what it's called in. Have you ever heard of Sir Gawain the Green Knight?
Yeah. So I remember reading that in high school. Yeah.
Yeah, I took this amazing class, my first class in college, and never topped it, called Fiction Before the Novel, which is all the stories that were before Don Quixote.
Canterbury Tales.
Yeah, and
amazing.
You can see these
archetypes, characters.
These archetypes, but also the structure, especially the green world thing, which is you start in your normal world, and then the character, who's a neophyte of some kind, he passes through a threshold, usually with some kind of mentor, like Obi-Wan Kenobi, and he goes literally in Star Wars. He literally goes to another world, right?
Yeah.
And that world is where you kind of train yourself up and pass through these trials, and you become, you know.
In Pulp Fiction, this would be Zed's underworld with the camp and the.
Pulp Fiction is a bit.
Yeah, and sometimes you travel into Hades, like
no, really,
the
because that world
Gilgamesh.
that he takes you down of Zed's underworld is it makes no sense to anybody, but it really does feel like kind of an insane, wild journey that you just took.
Yeah,
with
that's
Bruce Willis' character.
Yeah,
All kinds of
that part is usually called the belly of the beast, when things are very, very. It's like Jonah in the whale. Like you're really, and there's like no escape, and then
Hercules.
But then the hero using his, his training and his knowledge that he's acquired. So in some ways it can be kind of when you see it overdone, and it can be a little much.
He kind of does that with Kill Bill as well, with her training.
Right. This is the formula. Now I'm not saying the formula's better than I'm not saying it's good because of the formula. What I'm saying is Pulp Fiction is a flashy, almost cartoonish movie with all kinds of superficial things that make it funny and fun and unexpected, but inside of it there's steel in the walls there.
Right.
And there's a nucleus there that is connecting with the human experience.
Right.
Which is kind of a funny phrase to put in concert with Tarantino, right? It's not like when you think of Tarantino, you don't think the human experience, but inside that movie there is, and I'll tell you.
Because after all, Jules, the whole walking the, you know what I mean? Like there's a feeling like this film is tapping into something deep. It's just very hard to analyze it, which is part of why.
Now that last scene in the diner when Samuel L. Jackson says he's going through his Bible verse, and he's examining it, right? Because when you first hear him say it, he's just like he says in the film, I just thought of some cool shit to say. Now he's really examining it, and you see him actually thinking through it. He goes, well, maybe I'm the shepherd, and you're the evil. Maybe I'm this and that. And then he goes, but that shit ain't the truth. The truth is, you're the weak. And he's pointing the gun at the guy. You're the weak, and I'm the tyranny of evil men. But I'm trying, Ringo. I'm trying real hard to be the shepherd. Right? Now when he says that, even just saying it now, I get like a chill down my spine. You know what I mean? Because he's actually trying to like redeem himself or something. You know what I mean? That is the hardest. Now, maybe another actor couldn't pull it off, but that to me is the he's connecting to something very human in there. Now,
and real quick, as an aside, since you mentioned like fiction before, or stories before, novels and so on, the Achilles character. I mean, Iliad is really about the maturation of an Achilles character who is, again, full of rage and fury, just like, it's all about the wrath of Achilles, his, like, childish anger. And all of those, like, male characters, those main male characters in the Iliad are all, men who feel the need to really, like, conquer and dominate and that masculine, and then by the end there's this very subtle maturation process that is a little bit like him becoming, like
I'm going to walk the earth, give up the life of crime.
And
we just witnessed a miracle, and I want you to acknowledge it. Okay, so here's my theory on Pulp Fiction, is that it's jumbled up fragments, different characters, it's non-linear, but it is, the way you experience, like it has to be in that order, because the way you're experiencing it is the way that we are experiencing life, which is you start with the first main story is John Travolta going on a date with his boss's wife, and then he has to save it, right? But it's like adolescence in a way. He's getting ready for his big date. He's going to the prom. Yeah. Right?
It's awkward. It's
awkward.
Set up.
Yeah.
People even are joking about him, like, oh, you're going on a date with the birds. Teasing him.
It's very juvenile in a way.
Juvenile.
It's a juvenile challenge that he has to go through, just like we all had to go through. Remember your first date, right? Then there's the second story, Bruce Willis. Now he's with the woman. He's found love.
There's also drug binge and all that stuff in the first one.
There's also all the drugs in the first one.
Which also...
Yeah, and Bruce Willis, he's not doing drugs.
Going to the dance.
Going to the dance, exactly. Right. That's the first part. Going to the dance, going to the prom.
50s bar, like...
Yeah, you're going out with the girl. It's very adolescence, right? Yeah. Now, Bruce Willis. Bruce Willis doesn't do drugs. He's with his woman who he loves. And this is where I think the Godard influence comes in, right? I mean, people forget there's this basically like a 5-minute shot of them just in bed cuddling. In Pulp Fiction. The movie people remember for the violence. There's also like a long cuddle scene.
The dance sequence before that, right, between him and Uma Thurman, which is supposed to be really well done, but feel very improvised and very loose. Like kind of like they're not even dancing that well. Tarantino has described that. Right, it's from Une Balle d'Apart, Band Apart. which is also
with the three of them.
Right, which is also where he gets his production company and band apart. But it's interesting, real quick, that period that he takes off for about 8 years between Jackie Brown and I think we're all in agreement. His first 3 films are really on a different level, right? Yeah. Then he comes back and does all these spaghetti western dramatizations of historical events.
Sergio Leone.
Famous, and it's Sergio Leone. And he did an interview for the Reservoir Dogs DVD, which I say everybody should go back and look at. It's really interesting. It's right in that period. He very awkwardly is trying to explain why he's no longer a fan of Jean-Luc Godard, and he's like, I don't mean to be disrespectful, I feel really bad, but I'm just not into him anymore. And I understand, because I was into Godard as well when I was working at the media microtext library at my college. He had his little college pretentious era when he was working at a video store in LA. That's how and so for people at that stage, so even Godard has that bit of that, but I think Tarantino did Godard better than Godard, right? Because it feels more middle brow and more relatable, and not just Godard turns it and ends up being like a pretentious art house filmmaker, like navel gazing and stuff like that. But anyway, so you were saying, sorry to cut you off. Go off on that tangent. So
right now
we're on the second part.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, first part is adolescence, the date, the dance, the girl, drugs.
Yeah.
It's your first date, right? That's what's resonating with you, the audience.
Cheeseburgers, milkshakes.
Right. Now we're in the second part. Now you found the woman. He's in bed with her. He loves her. Coupled them. But and also but he's also remember this story about his father.
Yeah.
Right. So now you're on to kind of middle age now.
Yeah.
The legacy of the father. You now have
you're
a
willing
wife.
to die to maintain that.
Right. And he's got to go back and get the watch and like that. And he
have
also has to save this guy's life who's trying to kill him.
Yeah. Right, and that's going down the green world, like the rabbit hole.
Yeah.
in Pulp Fiction is that insane.
Yeah, going down there into the...
So the idea is that Pulp Fiction does follow the traditional film formula, but instead of one protagonist, follow different protagonists.
These protagonists are kind of like... Stages. They're kind of like one soul in a way. Like we're experiencing it,
The audience is the main character.
The audience experience... there's a reason it is in that order, because that is the order that makes sense, that resonates the most with human experience. The neophyte first, you know what I mean, but young is it's your first date, adolescence, then middle age, you found the woman, but now you gotta basically come up with some kind of livelihood and make sacrifices, and you're thinking about your father and lineage and legacy. That's the perfect word. Mm-hmm. Now we're on the third part. It's the most interesting. Mm-hmm. The third part, it starts with seeing the scene again from the beginning where he shoots the guy with the Bible verse. And I will strike down with furious anger those who attempt to poison and destroy my brothers. And you will know my name is the Lord when I lay my vengeance upon thee. Now, we come back to that scene.
Divine intervention.
Divine intervention comes out.
Which a lot of old people are dealing with this whole, this question.
Yeah, once you get older. Once you get older, you start to... remember, when you're young, you care about what people think of you, what do my high school friends think of me and whatever. And then as you get older, you start thinking about life, and there's so much weird shit happening all the time that you can't explain that you start to grapple with the larger questions of life, right?
Death now has definable features, as they say in Network, right?
Death now has definable. I love Network.
Yeah, it's a great moment
Network.
Where he expresses that now suddenly death is. With definable features.
Oh man! One time I broke up with the girl and I based it off that scene.
Your television incarnate, right? When he confronts him with
we're having a real situation. What does he say?
We are characters trapped in a movie. Don't you see? I'm one of your scripts from one of your TV plots. Blah 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 blah. And then he gives the whole as he's walking around. Now for next week's entertainment as the credits roll, blah, blah, blah. And he walks out. Because the whole time he's been telling her, our relationship is scripted. And of course, you're watching a movie, right? The film is drawing your attention to this.
This is some real life happening right now. I love it.
Godard used to do that too, and Tarantino too. Making you think about the fact as an audience, having some detachment about the fact that you're watching, meta.
Okay. So let's go back to the third final chapter, which is really Samuel L. Jackson's story, right? Number one is Travolta's story. Number 2 is Bruce Willis, in middle age. And now the third one is kind of like Samuel L. Jackson reckoning with like his life of crime, this divine intervention that happened, and trying to, and now he's going to leave it behind, right? And this is the argument they're having in the car about, like, you think God came down and stopped those bullets, right? Yeah. And now they have to, and the two major scenes that happen, one is literally cleaning up, right? Which is basically like your life as you get older, right? It's just a lot of cleaning up, and then there's the scene, of course, with Tarantino. He's saying, I don't want to get divorced. These are old. These are older people problems. I don't want to
lose by having this connection to my neophyte stage.
Right.
My bad. I don't want my wife to come in and is drinking the coffee. I get the gourmet stuff.
Right. Now you're getting older, right? You're getting washed. Right. You know the phrase washed? In America, washed is...
Good, sir.
No, you don't know washed, right? No. So washed is like you're washed. Kind of.
It means washed up.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't mean that. Washed is like, so like, let's say all your friends, they like go out drinking and partying, whatever. And then there's one friend who's more domesticated. He's got a wife. He's got responsibilities.
This is literally the washed friend.
He has bath towels, those little towels that you use for hand towels. Like you go to his house and it's got like, there are things that, it's not like this house. You know what I'm saying? Like you go there, it's like got a woman's touch basically. Even if he doesn't have to. Yeah, he's washed. He's responsible. He's washed, right? Yeah. So that
it does derive from washed up.
Doesn't derive from washed up.
Okay.
Because it doesn't mean the same thing.
You know what?
I think I think it literally means you look clean, like you look better.
Like LeBron, for instance, Skip Bayless always talks about. He calls him the washed king. He's just talking about the fact that LeBron is like old and like over the hill. Yeah. But anyway,
I don't even. But okay, maybe there's whatever. Yeah. So now they've cleaned up. And they're at the diner, and they're discussing divine intervention. And now Samuel Jackson says, so he's like, what are you going to do? Travolta says this, you're going to be a bum. He's like, no, I'm just going to walk the earth, right? So now we're getting actually kind of spiritual, right? I mean, this story now resembles like the origin story of an ascetic, like a monk who like leaves, like the Buddha or whatever.
Obi-Wan Kenobi character.
Yeah, like he leaves the material world and actually goes and like gives up his whole existence to go walk the earth like a Kane in Kung Fu, right? Mm-hmm. And then another scene we've seen before again happens, continuing, which is the very, very first scene from the intro of the movie, which is the hold up in the diner by Tim Roth and his girlfriend, Yolanda. Mm-hmm. And then they're in this Mexican standoff, and like you've said a lot, like they could kill these. I mean, these are expert hitmen.
Especially once Travolta comes out.
Right, when Travolta comes out, like
two against Yolanda.
There's no battle there, right?
Yeah. Tim Roth has no gun, right?
And but remember what he's doing. There's something that repeats in all these stories. That the first one's Travolta's story, second one's Bruce Willis, third one is Samuel Jackson. But there's something that they all have to do in their story, which is they have to save a life. Mm-hmm. They have to save a life. Travolta saves Uma Thurman by
coming out of the bathroom
with the overdose.
Then he gets Bruce killed Willis coming out of the bathroom.
Then there's the bathroom stuff. Right. But I'm saying that they all have to save a life.
Right.
Bruce Willis saves his enemy who's trying to kill him, Ving Rhames.
Right.
You got to do the impression at some point.
At some point, I'll do my Ving Rhames impression.
But you heard this? It's incredible.
So the
third thing now, Samuel Jackson is saving this guy's life, but as he's saving his life, it has extreme spiritual significance for him. And he's even talking it out with the Bible story. It could mean that I'm the shepherd. And that shit ain't the truth. The truth is, you're the weak, and I'm the tyranny of evil men. But I'm trying, Ringo, real hard to be the shepherd. And then when he does, and it's like this incredible moment. Right. Like when I see that, like I want to have some transformation like that in my own life.
You really want to be Samuel, like
he's like
the ultimate cool. That's also why I didn't like Jackie as much, because the Odell Roby character that he does is fantastic, but you still kind of miss Jules when you're watching him being an asshole.
Yeah, I mean,
you still kind of miss Jules, right? Like Jules is like the coolest guy.
It's one of the most amazing, It's one of the most amazing transformations and redemptions on cinema I have ever seen. That character thinking it out loud for you.
see, now I'm thinking,
Right.
maybe you're the this and you're the that. Because again, like, he started off so angry and so that he just thought
And
it was
cartoonish.
Cool. But he's telling that Bible verse.
Right.
I mean, it's
because he
the
thinks
sacred
it sounds
and the profane,
cool,
right? Or like he's taking something sacred and he's doing the most profane thing possible, the most unchristian thing, which is using it to sound cool before he kills somebody.
Yeah.
Right? And now he's just reconsidering.
Now he's really thinking about it. And by the way, the fact that it's the Bible is, I mean, all of these things add together, right? Like the Bible verse does sound cool. He says that.
Yeah,
but it is also literally the Bible. It is the
right.
It's spiritually
point,
significant.
Yeah.
He's having a spiritual transformation and reckoning in front of your eyes, and it's not corny at all, and it's like fucking deep.
Yeah.
In Pulp Fiction, the flashy surf rock music,
Yeah.
you know, in that movie, there's something
Right.
spiritually
About low lives on the
significant.
margins of Los Angeles doing drugs like
I
heroin.
think that's
It's
incredible.
Like, yeah,
That's
also
a testament to Tarantino's skill as a
right
especially dialogue.
because you feel that he's more of a writer than
Yeah,
That's
exactly. But when you think about it, also, if you're explaining the Samuel Jackson character to somebody who didn't see the film, if you're summarizing what you know about the character, you don't know anything. In terms of character development, we don't get much.
Yeah.
In terms of the rules of movies, you don't know anything about the guy. Because any other movie, if you want depth to understand the character, you got to give us a lot more.
Yeah, exposition,
But, just
background.
something about him. But we don't really know anything about him. He's a cool-looking hitman that survives an unlikely, gets in a freak
it's true.
accident.
There's very little backstory.
And then he decides to stop being hitman.
Right.
That's all we know when you really think about
Yeah,
it.
we
Right.
don't really
But
know who
it's
Jules
through-
is. Yeah.
But it's through the power of dialogue that you feel like you understand the character.
Right. There's
Right.
no
We don't know
exposition.
anything
Yeah,
about
yeah.
him. We don't know anything about him. We're not supposed to even connect with him at all when you think
Right.
about it.
Instead of
Right.
exposition, there's anecdotes. Where you would have exposition in a
Yeah.
normal script,
Yeah.
where they tell you a little bit of backstory and they give you hints about this or that. We have a little bit about it about Vincent, mostly that he went to Holland, but even that becomes just little anecdotes about Royale, which, little iconic.
Exactly.
conversation.
The amazing thing about his dialogue is that they're talking about normal stuff, but it has a lot of subtext. It gives you so much about the characters.
Right.
Tarantino's dialogue, you know what I mean?
Right.
Because
In a
he's talking
natural
about
way.
foot massage. Yeah, it's very natural.
Because exposition often is what feels contrived
Yeah.
in writing, because it's like,
Right.
hey, I got to let the audience know,
Right.
so blah, blah, blah,
Exactly.
especially the pilots of television. It's annoying,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
It's like,
exactly.
that they don't have normal conversations
feel
like
natural,
this.
yeah.
Right, it's just you're filling the audience and filling it. He doesn't do that. He fills
Yeah.
you in through
Just
natural
anecdotes,
conversation.
jokes, but somehow you feel like you understand the characters.
Right.
Yeah,
Even though
and
they
you're
don't
also
give you anything.
you're
Right,
watching them change.
Yeah.
You know, and you're watching them think through their changes. Like you're watching their thought process.
Yeah, that's
You
what I
know
mean
what
by dialogue. Exactly. It's about
Yeah.
the dialogue that makes it so amazing. Because
Yeah.
you don't really know, at the end of the day, we really don't understand these characters. He gives us
You don't.
one thing about them, each. Like Bruce Willis, he has a connection with that watch.
Yeah.
Otherwise,
Yeah.
he's just a boxer. You know what I mean? Samuel
Right.
Jackson
Right.
is just a hitman that,
Right.
who had a revelation or some sort of
And
experience.
his girlfriend is a vegetarian, or at least that's what he
Yeah,
tells us.
exactly.
But we don't really know if
Everything
that's
else
true,
is
yeah,
kind
yeah.
of like very minor.
Right.
So in terms of character, in terms of when you really think, that's why I think they tell film students, don't try to write like Tarantino.
No.
Because you're going to fuck it up.
You're going to fuck that.
You know what I mean? There's no way you can, because he's
Yeah.
an outlier, There's no way to write like that and somehow have it make sense. He never gives you enough information, yet you feel like you know the characters.
Yeah.
And you can tell when someone's trying to do. I mean, Kevin Smith sort of writes, and independently, right? He's not trying to imitate Tarantino, but there are very few people who can capture the sound of natural dialogue and make it more interesting than conventional storytelling. That's why it's conventional storytelling, or make the conventional storytelling, as Danny's telling us, so subtextual and so implied that you can enjoy the story as an audience member without really. And of course, the trope of going to the bathroom and the trope of coming out and saving somebody who's always saving a life come together too. Because I pointed this out to Danny. It's like, so Travolta comes out of the bathroom the first time and has to save a life with Mia, right? Then he comes out of the bathroom at the end the second time in real time, and he has to possibly save it. It's unnecessary, but he gives Samuel L. Jackson the upper hand.
Yeah.
Such that now Yolanda is completely screwed, and now Samuel L. Jackson is literally just trying to save a life.
Yeah.
The time that Travolta comes out, and he doesn't have his guns, is when he loses his life, right, in the middle, which is the end in real time. At that point, right, like, if Samuel L. Jackson and Travolta are paired together, we don't know why Travolta's sent there by himself, but we can kind of assume that Sam Jackson would have been with him. if he hadn't chosen to walk the earth.
I had never thought of this until
Right.
you told us.
So that decision by Sam Jackson, walked Earth,
to leave
may have saved Sam Jackson's life, assuming Bruce Willis could have taken them both out.
Yeah.
But more likely is what
Got it.
damns Travolta, right?
Mm.
And so it's these little. It's like he's talking about his own salvation, his own soul.
Right.
But really, that decision subtly may very, and we now know this. The back of our minds, we've seen what's about to happen to Travolta, right? Or what already happened to Travolta in our minds, right?
Mm.
And so that's kind of
That's another fascinating thing about Pulp Fiction I noticed is how many very unlikely coincidences are in the movie. You know what I
Right,
mean?
like running into Ving Rhames on the street.
Running into Ving Rhames, the fact that Bruce Willis is a very wanted man by the mob, but he goes to his house and it's just one guy and he happens to be in the bathroom. You know what I mean? If that story was told in a linear way, it would have been almost unbelievable. It would have been, because every movie has coincidences.
Yeah.
But Pulp Fiction almost seems like it has to be intentional. Because the fact that Samuel Jackson's character doesn't get hit by a single bullet,
right.
it's all about these like huge
Yeah.
coincidences that happen in their lives.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It can't be.
This is also
Divine
this is also what Magnolia is about.
Yeah.
So I haven't listened to as many interviews with them I think as you guys, but I because I love P.T. Anderson.
Right.
You know.
And they are very much
They're like
Tarantino and
they're
Anderson
like
see each other.
kind of they're like
rival brothers.
But yeah,
right?
like they're
yeah,
both
yeah,
at the same time, and they're both trying to. They see each other as the guy to beat.
Yeah.
Right.
You know what I mean? And Tarantino says that explicitly. He says when he came out with There Will Be Blood, which he like loves.
Yeah.
He's like, yo, I have to up my game.
Right, right, right.
And
Seems
that's
like
he says
he's
that's what made him
intimidated
make.
by him,
right, right.
Sorry, what did you say?
He's intimidated by him. It seems.
Yeah, like they
Yeah.
respect each other so much that they're like,
Yeah.
yo, like he can do something I can't, and he can, do, you know what I mean? So he
Right.
says that after There Will Be Blood, which I think is like probably top 3 movies of the last 21st century.
But they also both come
He
out
made
of the
Inglourious
boom.
Bastards to try and match that.
But they also both that's true. But they also both came out of the gate like prodigies. Like, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
holy
yeah.
shit, this person's doing something nobody's seen before
Right.
around the
Yeah.
same era.
And
right?
also
Anderson a little
movie, self-referential movie.
Right. Right.
But
A
they
lot
were
of
like the top. They were the
coincidences,
top.
right,
I
right.
can't think of anyone that matches
It
them.
seems. I would say in some ways P.T. Anderson's more skilled because he has more tools, more skills. You know, in
Yeah.
his bag. You can kind of switch up his style. Is what I
And
mean.
more, and he learned
He does switch up,
restraint.
right.
Tarantino has a shtick, and he's really
A
good
little
at
bit,
it.
yeah,
He's really good at it. He's one
Yeah.
of the best at it. But Tarantino cannot switch up it. He cannot surprise you.
I,
He
I
doesn't
would say the
evolve
one
like
exception
that.
is
Yeah, I
Jackie
agree.
Brown
Jackie Brown, I say it's because it's adopted. I mean, from a novel.
from Elmore Leonard.
Elmer Leonard, yeah.
Yeah.
Another thing about Elmer Leonard is, you know how Tarantino talks about Sergio Leone or Godard, like his biggest influence. I think his biggest influence is Elmore Leonard.
Mm.
He doesn't give him enough credit.
You've read a lot of his stuff?
Yeah, I've read
So-
a bunch of it's
He's the man.
yeah, it's fantastic.
He is the best at
Yeah.
that. The,
What? How would you describe
crime.
Not just
Okay.
crime, but
Crime fiction.
Tarantino-esque crime. It feels like if you read an Elmer Leonard
Yeah,
novel,
it's very
it feels
cool.
very like before Tarantino though.
Yeah.
And you can tell that Tarantino's copying his style to a
Mm.
certain. He learned from him.
Yeah.
Because the dialogue style is the same. The way that all characters get depth. You know, there is no stereotypes in Elmer Leonard
Yeah.
stories. There is
Yes.
no typical villain.
Yes.
You know,
Yes.
the villain has something you love about him.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Right, right,
Yes.
right,
The
right.
hero has something that's annoying about him. Just
Right,
like
right, right.
so
Yes.
it's very realistic and
Right.
It's very realistic, and it's you know, like it's called Pulp Fiction for a reason. Like
Right.
it's taking this genre, which is not really known for depth and 3-dimensional characters.
Middlebrow.
It's taking this pulpy.
Right.
yeah.
You know, it's like when rap became like really good. You know what I
Right,
mean? Like
right,
it's
yeah.
taking this genre, which is kind of known as almost like a novelty.
Right. Low art.
Low art, and then, like, making
elevating
it-
it to middlebrow.
I would say like elevating, but also like
Injecting it.
depthening it. I mean, it's
Right, right.
really adding depth.
Right, right, right.
You know that these hitmen are like have issues with their fathers, and you know it's
Yeah.
like stuff like that.
Exactly.
So I totally, yes,
Which is much more striking than if you take some like higher, like you take Shakespeare, you take Tolstoy or something like that, and you do it really well, real quality people like yes. But if you can take like a pulpy, you know what I mean, like a what on the surface seems very low art or very escapist,
right.
very very fun, you know. And actually, Godard tried to do that. Godard was very much a hero to this is why Pauline Kael loved Godard. Because she projected all this onto him, like he's meeting like the entertainment, the masses or whatever, and Tarantino, like a lot of people, is obsessed with Pauline Kael, the critic, and in the end, like I feel like Godard, he never escaped the pretension or the because Godard, I mean, it's significant. We talked about the French Connection on here, you know, how Billy Friedkin like brings over, and it's French Connection, brings over what they're doing in the French New Wave, which is the way they're shooting these films. They're not staged. They're not. There's a great conversation between Fritz Lang and Fritz Lang and Godard about the old generation and the new, right? Like these improvised, these little crews going out there and just shooting with a lot of jump cuts, a lot of fast pace, blah blah blah. And so Godard is really important in terms of filmmaking, but there's always that level of this guy's like really full of himself, and it's not quite. Tarantino's the one who actually gives it that popular, that relatable aspect that I think, Godard never quite reaches. This is my opinion.
Wide appeal.
Yeah.
To me, Jackie Brown is great because, for some reason, Tarantino is this raw talent, but he's also fucking annoying.
Yeah, he's really annoying.
You know what I mean?
Really
And to me, like, when you take talent reaches its I don't know how to say this. How it reaches its finest when it's restrained. So especially something explosive like that. And for some reason, and you see this with P.T. Anderson too. His first movies are all Scorsese, right?
Yes, definitely.
Constantly moving. It's constantly flashy. It's these young guys trying to show off. Right. I'm gonna go big.
Right.
And in his later years, he's restrained.
Right.
The camera doesn't
Subtle,
move.
yeah.
Subtlety. Now Tarantino went the other direction in his life because of his. I think he has some personality. He's still trying to show off, right?
Yeah.
He's still trying to show off. But in Jackie Brown, for some reason, he's just made Pulp Fiction. I mean, he's the guy.
Yeah.
He's number one. And for some reason, Jackie Brown, maybe because it's based on his favorite writer, or I personally believe it's, I think that he showed restraint in that movie because he realized that if you're going to do a movie about black characters, where they're the main, and black characters in real life, it's got this black exploitation feel, but it's really set in the real world. I think more so than any of his other movies. It's really in the real world. It's at the mall, right?
Yeah.
It's set in the real world, and he's saying, I think, for whatever reason, and at that point in his career, on this subject matter, he said, I'm dealing with not just real life, but with black people's real life in America, in L.A.
Yeah.
And I need to show some respect and some restraint. That is what I get from the movie. Or sorry, that's why I think it is so good, is that he treats these characters with utmost respect, especially Pam Grier's character.
But that's the thing. I feel like everything good I love about that film is all Elmore Leonard. That's
right.
Because any of the novels or any of it, that's his style. Everything good about Jackie Brown.
But Rum Punch does not have a black lady as the.
It doesn't.
It doesn't.
No.
She Brown.
She wasn't black.
She's
black.
white.
Yeah,
So
maybe about Rum Punch. I haven't seen that.
Rum Punch is the novel that Jackie Brown is based on.
Okay.
But I hope I'm not
No, you're right. It's
being tactless, but Jackie Brown is about a black woman. It has to be. And all the soundtrack is Motown. It's about the black. It's about some aspects of black American experience.
It's
I think he's treating that with. I think he treats it with the. I think the reason it's good is that he says this is real stuff, and I have to treat it respectfully. It's not a cartoon.
Yeah.
It's not a game. Yeah. This is real life, and
right
I think
after that movie, we went the other way with Kill
Yeah.
Bill.
Went the other direction.
And we noticed we were talking about this off air that like he is very much raised in the black culture, right?
But he's a total dick about it most of the time.
Right, he attributes the story, the Moore story in True Romance, one of the greatest scenes
I love that
in film history, to an older black guy that he was around who passed away by the time the movie came out, and or by the time he did the commentary. I don't remember. But it's like, at some point the overuse of the N-word. We were talking about his really obnoxious take on Jordan Peele's Get Out, which is a great film, and he acknowledges it, but he says this whole thing about how this is the film that black audiences wanted to see, but they didn't know. At the same time, this point about restraint, two thoughts come up. One is that's also one of the arguments of the French New Wave, is the reason to improvise, the reason to not have a big budget, the reason not to stage is not only because you're trying to get away from the le cinéma du papa, like the daddy's movies, right? Like you're trying to be fresh, but having limited resources, that scarcity is actually it creates more opportunities for creativity, right? Like what Sidney Lumet called the happy accident. That's what you're always looking for, is the happy accident. The other thought I had, though, is what Kidus pointed out one episode, I think a couple times you mentioned that you love Steven Soderbergh. Right? Like that's what a director should be, because Steven Soderbergh is not. It's not about him. It's not about his style. It's about whatever the story needs.
Yeah.
I have such strong love-hate feelings for Steven Soderbergh.
Go ahead.
He's made some of the best movies I've seen, and he's made some of the worst movies I've ever seen. But hold on, there's one more thing I actually just thought of, which I think is really key to Tarantino. Remember, we were talking about Reservoir Dogs. The story, remember how he has to remember the story? And the story will sell, Tim Roth, the undercover cop. They're all,
when he tells the story.
They're all looking for the rat. It turns out it's Tim Roth.
Yeah.
Right.
And you go back into his story, and
it's a story within a story within a story. It's like four
right,
levels.
4 levels of story.
Because the cops are telling a story within his story that he's telling.
And he has to memorize the story, which
like
will make
levels,
him seem real. I mean, this is very deep kind of stuff.
It's riveting to watch.
He has to remember this story, because every criminal has a story. Every person has a story. He has to remember his story in order to convince the criminals that he's real. He has to remember a fictional story in order to convince them that he's real. Now, this is what I want to point to. Inside that story, there is a story inside the story.
Right. The police.
The police. And they're saying mad racist shit, right?
Buddy, I'm gonna punch you in the face.
They're talking about police brutality. They're white cops, white LAPD cops, and this is Rodney King time. I mean, LA is the heart of fucked up race relations in America in the 90s. And inside that story, he's got like drugs on him or something.
Yeah, he's got a bunch of weed on him.
Yeah.
He runs into a dog. The dog is barking.
The dog is barking. The dog is a police dog.
They're telling a story
on the leash and the cops are telling a story in his story
about how they almost shot somebody.
And they almost shot a black guy.
Yeah.
Now, you see what I'm saying?
And they blame him. Like, this guy doesn't know how stupid this guy is.
I think they use the N-word probably, right?
But
I think so. It's definitely about white, black, police, black, race relations.
His girlfriend is a Oriental. He uses the term Oriental.
They're definitely racist cops. They're definitely racist cops. And you asked me the other day, why does if we're talking about Pulp Fiction, we have to. Ving Rhames gets raped anally. Gets raped, and you did not notice that the Zed is actually a police officer. Remember? He comes in with the blue. He's a police officer. So what I'm saying is, I totally agree. Tarantino's a dick, especially about when he sometimes. I mean, he's correct me if I'm wrong, but it comes across like too familiar. Like, bro, like you're not like that down yet.
But he's too familiar.
He's too familiar.
I'll give you like 4.
It's like when Bill Maher said the N-word and Ice Cube was like, bro, like. You're not really like there, with us.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, and like Tarantino puts himself in Pulp Fiction doing it. I think it's a great scene. Don't effing Jimmy me, Jules, because it's done a certain way.
Yeah, and he says
but
the M-word there.
You do it a few times. Okay, it's annoying.
Yeah.
But, okay, I'll take the cringe, but when it becomes, I literally can't watch Hateful Eight. I can't get through it. It's just every 5 seconds.
Because now he's trying to make a point. Oh, I can do it.
I can do it. Nobody else can. Because I'm so.
I fucking hate that. But what I'm saying is, in those first 3 movies, and I think that LAPD scene in the heart of the story, which I think is the crux of the movie.
Right.
In the heart of it is something so fucking real.
Right.
That. Police brutality against black people, which is still one of the major issues in America, right? I think that he takes that seriously.
He does.
He takes that seriously, and I think that when he puts on his like nice clothes and behaves himself and when he sees that some things are worthy of, that they need to be treated with seriousness and respect.
Yeah.
Right.
That's when his movies get really, really good.
Yeah.
At the same time,
and that's why Jackie Brown, I think, is...
One of the things that's subversive about that scene in Reservoir Dogs is also, this is a cop trying to sell the story, as you said, to convince them they're criminals. And within that, you have a fictional depiction of the way cops would tell stories to each other.
Right, which is also the most real part of the movie.
Right. So
see what I'm saying? It's the most real life.
Right. So he has to sell the cops. That's the irony, right? It's story within story within story, and it feels the most real. But it's those cops, when they're telling the story, like it has to sound the way a criminal would think of cops, which is they're a bunch of like annoying, like goofy assholes, like buddy, I'm gonna shoot you in the face. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
to me, I think that's the most realistic scene in the movie.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, it has to depict cops the way criminals would think of them. Yeah.
but also he's depicting them talk about race. What I'm saying is,
Yeah.
Tarantino movies are like cartoons. They're not in the real world.
Yeah.
But
Jackie Brown is more so.
But like when he does deal with the real world, I think there are some issues that he says, okay, this is real stuff,
Yeah.
and I'm
Should I
gonna
do the
treat
Ving Rhames
this
stuff?
right.
Should I do the Ving Rhames though?
I would.
Have I done it for you?
No, I don't.
So on Hollywood, I went as Ving Rhames, right? I think we had agreed actually that you would come as Tarantino, your wife would come
Yeah,
as Mia Wallace. We had this whole arrangement. We ended up at different parties, right?
Yeah.
So anyway,
I've seen the picture of you in the sweater.
suspenders, and just you put a little tape and then you get the little soul patch drawn on, and you get and I have an orange shirt. He's wearing
Let's
an
hear
orange
it. Let's
shirt.
hear it.
Let's see.
Can we put Al Green on? We got to put Al Green on while he does it. Is that possible? Can I like play it on my
Let's
phone?
stay together. Let's see. Okay, let's play.
This is too good. We have to. Let's do it right.
I have to see it now. I have to like not mess it up.
We can't mess it up.
No,
Flagged on
theater.
YouTube, though.
So here's the thing.
It might get flagged.
I like to do impressions too, but I can't. Like your body, you're the instrument that is made to do this impression.
Thank you. I don't know what that means. Thank you.
It means you're a big black man. I don't know what to
I got
Born
you.
thespian.
Actually,
I was
no.
born like Ving Rhames.
Does anyone have like YouTube or something?
You know, I'll just do the voice.
Hold on.
Does he look like P.T. Anderson? Like a young P.T. Anderson?
I do look like P.T. Anderson, and I always wanted to be
Yeah,
him
yeah.
too.
I think he looks like
I think Paul Thomas Anderson looks kind of weird, honestly. He has
Yeah?
a weird face.
I don't look weird.
I just
He
like,
doesn't look weird?
no, I think Paul Thomas Anderson has kind of like a weird face. Great director, weird face.
Did you see
Tarantino, you know what Tarantino looks like? Do you remember Roger Federer?
Roger Federer.
Do you remember Roger for the Swiss tennis
Yeah,
player?
yeah.
They got the same face.
Yeah, the angular.
Slim face.
P.T. Anderson and Federer.
No.
Okay, let's see it. Should I start over?
Now, but some cats, they think they're gonna age like fine wine. If you mean like vinegar, it do. You might hear in the night of the fight, you might hear a sting in your ear. That's pride fucking with you. Fuck pride. And the fifth, my ass goes down. Sick.
Fifth, my ass goes down.
I ain't got no problem with that, Mr. Or what does
Wow.
he say later on? What does he say? Step aside, Bush. I'll tell you what there is between me and you. There is
No, me and you.
and you. You can see him being very author. You
Love
ain't got
that.
no problem, Jules. I'm on the motherfucker. Just sit tight and wait for the wolf, who should be arriving directly. He doesn't have a lot of
Directly.
lines. He has probably like 15 lines in that whole movie, but between his delivery and the authoritative way in which it's written,
Wait.
you can see him kind of commanding.
Can you do when he says they're gonna bring torches and they're gonna like torture the guy? Yeah.
I don't remember the exact line. Though. It's okay.
Pipe hitting,
I think
pipe
we get
hitting.
the point.
Pipe hitting,
I
yeah.
think the audience gets the point. I do big range.
Yeah.
Wow. That was a real treat.
It goes real with the Al Green, but we should probably we might get pulled because I think that's over 30 seconds of Al Green. We apologize to whoever owns Al Green.
By
The
who?
Al Green estate.
He's a reverend now.
Yeah.
Al Green,
That's right.
he's still around. So old.
I believe he's still alive, and I think he's a reverend.
He's a reverend.
Yeah.
So is Mace.
He's walking the earth, huh?
He's walking the earth.
So and Mace also walking.
Mace.
No,
Mace
Mace
literally-
came back.
Oh, he's back into hip hop. Okay.
Well, I don't know. Yeah,
You know
you're right. He
Mace,
is a
right?
The
pastor.
rapper.
Yeah, Mace was
I
like
think I remember
one of the biggest rappers. He was gonna be the next
Is
Biggie.
that big?
Harlem
Harlem
World.
World. Harlem World. It was
World.
a huge album.
Yeah.
It was like
With the flashy suit era.
Right. Then he gets caught with a whore or something like that, or doing something wrong. So then he becomes Pastor Mason Betha. I even see him on 106 in Park and stuff like that. He's going back and trying to make up for all of the things that he's
Living for
done
the
wrong.
Lord.
Right. And so then Puffy goes and gets the next Biggie, and it's a guy named Shine who ends up going to jail over some
Shine is
gun
the man.
charge. But Shine, they were both really good. They were both really good, and Puffy is really good with finding deep voice like New York talent.
He's
And then-
gay now.
who? Shine?
No, Puffy. But by the way, you know
Well,
Shine?
what do you mean?
Oh, he's gay now?
What do you mean?
Well,
Be careful. What do you mean? We're on the air. We get slandered.
He's
Pulled down by.
he's a very happy fellow.
Oh, he's just happy.
He's just happy.
Oh, okay.
Oh, he's happy.
Yeah, I'm not trying to get sued by
He's
a Puff
finally-
Daddy.
He's finally happy.
Right,
That's
right.
good.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's real closet about that.
How did we end up on this tangent?
Sorry. Shine's
So-
dad is was a prime minister of Belize. Did you know that?
Really?
And also, I think Shine is now in politics in Belize.
This is the kind of stuff only Danny knows.
Hold on a second.
Weird.
Global
Weird.
geopolitical.
I mean, it's similar to the fact that Steve Kerr, because we're recording this. The last major thing that just happened is this awful shooting at the elementary school in Texas, and Steve Kerr's reaction has really caught on because there's a lot of basketball being played right now. The Western Conference Finals are nearby. Steve Kerr's obviously a real well-established Warriors basketball. He goes on there and he's getting very political about this, and everybody understands Steve Kerr has this cachet because his father was killed by gun violence. And if I read his father is like somebody like of significance in this. But anyway, this is the kind of thing. Do you know this?
Huh?
Steve Kerr's father. Exactly who is he?
No, I don't follow sports much, but
Right.
but Shine is a politician in Belize now, and his father was prime minister.
Let me look up Steve Kerr while we're at this, because I want to be careful about this. But it's like he has a certain cachet because people are like, why is Steve Kerr getting really, really? I mean, it's an awful thing, but he's getting really, really carried away and really, really directly political. And it's understood that it's because of his father, who I'm now going to Google. While we reminisce more about what is it about the 90s, man? It's just like we're in the same way that Tarantino, like when we sit and talk about Tarantino obsessing over the 70s, this golden age, and drawing on it and commenting on it over and over again, the music, the film, we have become the same way about the era that Tarantino and others define in nostalgia for the 70s, right?
I don't think it's subjective. I think 90s really was like sort of
Peace and prosperity. I mean, well, there's terrible civil wars, but
I mean,
neoliberalism ain't
But
I had a theory that art, like arts and culture would have this every 30 years or so there'd be this huge like complete what do you call it, renovation or like what happened in the 60s and then you have the 90s.
Yeah.
So with that calculation, then 2020s should be a cool era.
2020. Oh, you're saying that there'll be a renaissance
Every 30 years or so.
Yeah, and they usually happen to match up with huge societal, tumult and breakdowns, and
it's all connected.
as in when things get worse, the culture usually gets more interesting. Like that's the 70s. The 70s, is things are breaking
dark.
down. Things are breaking down. All the music's great. All the movies are great. Also,
Chinatown.
here's the other factor of this, and you can see this in Israel, by the way, which is when the left gets defeated, they go into the arts. So television shows in Israel are like fucking incredible, like right now. I mean, like
some people would say, well, Clinton is the left, right? So the left was defeated. Clinton is the defeat of the real
right.
left. Clinton
the real
is
left.
the real defeat. The checkmate of the American left is when
the anti-Vietnam War, Black Panthers, that kind of stuff.
And now the Democratic Party no longer believes in any major progressive agenda. I mean, name one progressive thing that Bill Clinton did in 8 years. He tried healthcare, and that's pretty much it. Right, and so like that was really the death knell of the American left was out of politics. You're right, in the 90s, and things got very, on one level, things are very happy-go-lucky, and there's this weird tension. Like even so grunge music is a reaction to the happy-go-luckiness, the obliviousness of the hair metal of especially in the combination. Right.
Which is also where those, girls in videos,
Yeah.
like now we associate with rap music, right?
Yeah.
Video vixens.
But video vixens, that starts with, what do you
The 80s.
The 80s hair metal groups, yeah.
Right.
But they were more focused on, how do I put this?
The bust, right.
The bust instead of
right.
because they're like,
maybe that's a cultural thing.
it's Italians.
But so in the early 90s, you have the grunge reaction, which comes from a lot of disaffected white youth in the Pacific Northwest, and then when that goes kind of negative, and also when all the killing starts happening in the hip hop community, you have this very brief reaction to it, which is the shiny suit era, which I'll get to when I get to talk about Will Smith, right? The shiny suit, everybody's doing shiny suit.
Bad
shiny,
boy.
everything is club, everybody's happy to. And in rock music, suddenly you had the reaction to man, grunge went really down a dark road. Was like No Doubt and Weezer and all this like goofy happy, even if it was good, goofy happy go lucky stuff that comes up in the Sublime, in the 90s.
It's always the other way. It goes the other way.
Yeah, it goes back and forth and back and forth, right? Because then there's a reaction to the shiny suits era in hip hop. Like by the late 90s, people are back to like.
See, I also think that there was a mini 70s between like 2006 and 2009. In film, when like sometimes I call 2000 to 2004 peak dumb. The dumbest time not just in American history, but human history.
Everybody's being stupid, yeah.
Remember, like, okay, when I graduated high school, the 50 Cent had 5 #1 singles at the same time. No one had done that since the Beatles. 50 Cent. Nothing against 50, but 5 #1, like the best? No.
He's actually
the #1 TV show was Family Guy.
Yeah.
You couldn't go anywhere without people fucking talking about fucking Family Guy.
Right.
And people, after they found out that WMDs was a lie, they elected Bush again.
Anyway,
Again. Now, and then, so that's what I call peak dumb. The dumbest fucking time. You know, this post 9/11 shit and the war, and everyone's for the war on terror.
Right. And this very very obvious anti-intellect, like right when we got into college, right?
Yeah.
This very obvious anti-intellectual. What are you doing, sitting and thinking?
Right.
Everybody's proudly stupid.
Proudly stupid. It was like the dumbest.
What do you think you are trying to be smart?
That's when I think Will Ferrell's impression of Bush well, one, it made his career, but it's also like the fucking. It was just the dumbest time ever.
Yeah.
Peak dumb. Then something interesting happens. Right when I think I started college was when Katrina happened.
Mm-hmm.
And then, of course, the Iraq War is unraveling before people's eyes, and everyone is becoming disenchanted and disillusioned, which is one of the coolest things that can happen, both in stories and also in real life, and which then affects stories themselves.
Yeah.
So what happens in that few years, you start to get these really cool movies. There Will Be Blood. You know what I'm saying? No Country for Old Men, which is Coen Brothers going dark after they had.
Have you seen The Man from Earth yet?
Have not seen it yet.
Please watch it on YouTube. I told you to watch.
Yes, because you're saying this is from this time period, right? 2007. 2007 is like the cool.
Dude, right?
Right, the professor, the sci-fi film. I won't say more. Zodiac came out that year. That's
Zodiac.
one of the best films, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's dark, it's interesting. People are actually thinking
Half
again.
Nelson from the year before. You know,
yeah,
that one with
it's
Ryan
a
Gosling.
very interesting little mini period.
The Dark Knight came out.
That's when which is all about the war on terror.
Right?
It's all about the war on
You're
terror.
right, 2008.
Yeah, it's about the war on terror.
Yeah. By the way, have you seen the new Batman?
Yeah.
It's literally about what just happened this week. You know.
School shootings.
Well, one of the Riddler, he. Have you seen the movie yet?
No. Oh, he's one of those disaffected youth that goes out.
No, but he uses the internet in order to create summon these MAGA school shooty terror white nat.
That's always been the Riddler, even when Jim Carrey.
It's very interesting and very.
Yeah.
I mean,
that's intentional. I think
it's very intentional.
Right. Oh yeah.
They're really. I think that movie really reflects these times, especially in America.
Joker also had similar themes.
Yeah. My father, this and that.
Yeah, the whole.
I think the Joker was meant to be like a terrorist kind of. The Dark Knight is all about war on terror. I mean, remember there's the cell phone thing and surveillance, but in a way it's kind of for it, sort of.
Also about exactly.
Sort of fucked up.
For it, and the idea that
it's kind of justifying it.
That the villains are you can't understand the villains well.
Yeah,
right.
There are villains that are so evil you have to break these rules.
From the point of view of the Americans, let's say, they just can't understand what it is that they
right. The Joker.
Some men
they can't be reasoned with.
Right. They just want to watch the world burn.
That's how they saw it.
Right. Which of course is fucking stupid because it's depoliticizing it. But at least it's reflecting on it. See that time is really, it's the downfall of Bush, the downfall of the war on terror. Everyone's thinking again, and then Barack Obama comes in, and we all went the fuck back to sleep because he's saying Al Green to us and told us everything would be okay, which it wasn't. Which is why I fucking hate that guy. Can I say that on here? I actually hate Obama more than Bush because what I hate the most is duplicity. At least with Bush, you knew this guy's a fucking asshole.
You should have known about Obama. We've had this argument before. I'm sorry, the fact that his skin is darker doesn't mean that.
No, he won.
Harvard Law.
Look, everyone was ready for transformational change. That's why they wanted him. And now we're fucked. That was the time to fix things. He had a supermajority in the Senate. He could have done anything.
He was also elected during the worst global economic crisis in history,
which allowed him to do anything he wanted. They were printing trillions of dollars.
It was not. I'm not saying that to excuse him. I'm saying the fact that everybody was on this ridiculous hope and change wave during the worst economic crisis ever kind of reminds me of something that happened in this country exactly 10 years after, or about 10 years to the year after. But I won't get into that any further because we don't talk about Ethiopian politics in here. But it's like when there's a massive crisis affecting the country, and all you can talk about is how this young, good-looking guy is saying all the right things when he's coming to power. You are really deluding yourself.
They had the chance. They had the chance.
Who who was the president of the university in Beirut.
They didn't
And it was
exactly. They
assassinated
didn't care.
in
They didn't
1984.
care. They were printing trillions of dollars to save the banks,
That's why
the
Steve
oil
Bannon-
industry, and do a surge in Afghanistan. That's what they spent it on. And now, when it turns out we need to fix the entire system, I mean, I'm like literally like the economic industrial system is breaking down. That was the time to fix it. And
I'm with you,
instead,
I'm with you.
dude,
Yeah.
and
And,
this guy just like all he cared about was himself. He didn't care about anybody else, man. Remember him drinking the water in Flint? Have you seen this video?
All I know
Sips the water in front of all these people that
and
love
all
him.
I know is I was telling everybody at the time, I'm not trying to sound like a prophet. I think anybody who could see through this basic stuff could figure it out. Within 2 years, everybody's going to freak out, get disillusioned, be like, what about hope? What about change? And blame him for everything. And he is neither the Messiah nor he's just another politician. And listen, you could freak out
But he
about
had
that.
the chance and he
Listen,
didn't care.
You could freak out about the individual occurrences of, again, it's because you, for some reason, sorry, I don't mean to racialize this, but for some reason people wanted to elevate this guy to Christ-like status. And of course, he played into it to get elected, but while assuming, like, lowering the bar for all these white politicians, right? Like, Bush did so many worse things, but it's like, yes, but Obama, as a black man, must achieve a certain level of
A, that's what he promised, and B, he had the
that's
chance.
what everybody promises.
He had the chance.
That's
It was,
what politicians promise.
but it was.
I think
I'm
people
saying it was
expect too much
it was a
from
window.
from the presidency. I don't think.
I'm
The
saying
only
his
reason
it's
administration.
the only reason he gets elected
And he had a
is that
super majority, man. Like, I'm saying, they had this narrow window when everyone was looking for transformational change that we need 10 years later. That was the time to fix this stuff. Now
Two
it's too
things.
late.
Yeah.
Can I
I
say
don't
two
think
things
politics
real
is going to bring about change.
First of all, right, politics, one of my favorite quotes, I forget what the literary is, political change can do nothing to alleviate human suffering. The thought that politicians are going, now, maybe outside of electoral politics, but I don't think
that's true at all.
I think
What are you talking about?
the expectation level, especially since, and let me address this one thing. You know this. Supermajorities are meaningless if the minority is consistently filibustering everything, right? So even the healthcare law, even though they had a
I thought
supermajority,
supermajority brings you above a filibuster. You don't need a filibuster
so
proof.
they had, okay, so then they didn't have a supermajority, you're right?
They did for 2 years.
No, they had,
2
no,
years.
they did not. They did not have
Yes,
60
they
senators.
did.
No, they did not. They had 58 senators, which is why they had to hold all 58 senators, hold them in line on the Democratic side, plus go get 2 senators. At most, they had 58 senators, which is a giant majority, but it did not. They never had enough to overcome a
I'm gonna
filibuster.
fact check you
The
right now.
Republican Party. I can't believe people don't remember this. The Republican Party literally filibustered everything. The Republican
Yes, after from the
no,
last
2008.
6
No,
years.
2008 to 2010. Even when they passed the healthcare law, which is before they got their
Right.
asses kicked in 2010,
Right.
they needed. Remember Arlen Specter? Remember, like when Obama was kissing Arlen Specter's ass, love Arlen Specter, lifelong Republican. Why? Because Arlen Specter was the 60th vote. They needed him, and I think it was Collins, one of the other Republicans. But nobody remembers this because everybody
Hold on,
again
hold on.
is like, but he said change. Why did the black man not walk on?
Hold on,
water?"
I'm
sorry.
fact checking you right
It's
now.
still 15 years later. Why did the black man not actually walk on water? Since that's the bar for us.
So speaking of
a lull.
a time when you were talking about a time when everybody was dumb and anti-intellectuals, I think I prefer that time. Now that I think about it, because these things, at a certain point, Demo, everybody became like armchair experts on everything, right? Like everybody has
Yeah.
like strong, like people, like regular laymen actually can argue with experts
Right,
and
right.
stuff. You know what I mean? That's
The
the
depth
time
of
we're at now.
expertise, yeah,
That's the
especially
time
social
we're at
media,
now,
yeah.
and I think that's way more dangerous than
Right, right, right.
anti-intellectualism, where
Right. Everybody thinks they're
pseudo-intellectualism is
intellectual.
way worse.
Right.
Which is at where we're at now.
Well, I mean, Gramsci makes the point, Antonio Gramsci, the Italian communist, that intellectual is a social designation. All men are intellectuals, is what he says, and it's true. You can talk to a beggar on the street. If you give them
Yeah.
resources, or if you just listen to their perspective with whatever tools they have, they can have an intellectual breakthrough. This is why a 26-year-old patent clerk in Switzerland has a breakthrough that none of the other theoretical physicists in there. So we can go on example after example,
Yeah.
right? But that's the thing is, like, there needs to be a social elevation by political society.
A brief
And it's
filibuster
for
proof
it's for specific
supermajority
purpose.
in 2008, 60 to 40 for 72 days.
For 72 days.
Okay.
Why was there 72 days? So not for the 2-year period then.
I guess just for 72 days. So
From which
we were both
No,
We're both a little wrong. A
No,
little right.
not at all, dude. When like
But
for
it was
those two, that
You're
2
not
year
right
period,
about this 58 thing.
dude.
60 to
It's
40.
58. They had.
Look at
Listen,
this. 60
my man.
40.
My man, you're talking about 72 days out of a 2 year period. Most likely, that means that one of the senators was during a runoff or something like that. That Congress, each Congress takes place over 2 years. That Congress had 58 Democratic senators, which, by the way, was to everybody shocking, right? Because normally it's like 51, 52, 53. That's how bad Bush was doing, right? They got 58. And then the Republicans were like, yes, well, the 42 of us aren't allowing you to pass shit. It was unprecedented, the use of the filibuster.
Yeah.
And they had to switch on the key legislation, which was the Affordable Care Act. They had to keep 58 Democratic senators in line, which is not easy, right? And also to get and they just barely passed what was a very moderate health care plan, which was proposed by moderate Republicans as an alternative to Clinton's healthcare plan 15 years before. And everybody who studies American politics knows this. But for some reason, there's this warped imagination, like, hey, there was this great opportunity, and it was all because Barack Obama was black. It was all because people wanted to project onto him this Black Christ thing. And when you listen, I've been not on the level of Obama, but I've been in prestigious institutions, whatever, as the one black guy. It is understood. You cannot make one freaking error. You are not allowed to be human. You have been fetishized and elevated to a certain level that you are not allowed to make. And people will project onto you all this stuff, and you're just like, because I'm well-spoken and I'm black, right? And I saw this with Obama, and I told everybody at the time, within 2 years, you're gonna be complaining about how disillusioned you are, and when you have to explain it, you're not going to be able to do so with any kind of clarity or with any kind of specificity.
They spent trillions of dollars on the oil industry. The Fed, right? That's not the Senate, that's the Fed. Trillions to prop up the oil industry. And Biden kept arguing like, yo, why don't we invest in like trains and like a new energy grid and all this stuff. And by the way, there was something called the Recovery Act, which is $700 billion that Biden was in charge of and worked really, really well. But there was like one little, people started talking about like Solyndra or whatever the fuck, and then they didn't go further with it. They could have gone further with it, and they didn't. They were printing trillions, man. Trillions.
Can I ask you a question, Danny?
Yeah.
You notice, not just with that, but there was also the bailout, again, during 2008 when everything was so sweet and wonderful, and there was all this worst economic crisis in global history. Anyway, but really, it's very important that the guy's skin complexion who was running for president. Anyway, that's what's more important than the fact that everybody was getting screwed over, the fact that there was all these, all these black owners, homeowners were being foreclosed upon. Everybody was just focusing on that one guy. Anyway, can I ask you a question? They bailed out the banks, right? Obama was for the intervention, right? McCain was for the intervention. Both parties, which you yourself and your Team A, Team B theory think the two parties are meaningless anyway. Both parties go along with, or their nominee goes along with this. Don't you think that before Barack Obama can get sniff anywhere near the presidency, probably even the nomination, deals are made that, yeah, you're not going to spend that money on infrastructure. You're not going to spend. Here's the other thing. Here's my ultimate reason.
They spent $700 billion. I'm just saying they could have spent. They could have.
No, because
like that was the time to fix shit.
They put him in power knowing that he wouldn't have done that. Right? That's a deal that is made ahead of time. Let me put it this way, right? The two most liberal presidents, we don't normally talk about politics on this. The two most liberal reformers.
I thought this was the movie episode.
Yeah, we'll get back to it. But this is important because you keep stating this, and it's aggravating. The two most important liberal presidents, liberal reformers in the White House since World War II are who? The two. Since World War II? Who are the two people who passed the most liberal reform, or who governed as liberals?
Besides the Vietnam thing.
Yeah, besides the Vietnam, so that kind of evens it out. So who are the other two?
Well, I'd say LBJ is number one.
Okay, LBJ, two more. Give me two more. I agree, LBJ on a lot of things. Yeah.
The most liberal...
As far as how they governed.
As in most liberal...
typical liberal policies.
Welfare state achievements.
Typical liberal policies, whatever they... I'll give you the answer. Dwight Eisenhower and Richard Nixon.
True.
You agree. Why is that? Because Dwight Eisenhower, and especially Richard Nixon, who carried, as we all know, those who study American history, carried all the anger that the South had the silent majority had in response to the civil rights movement and black people getting their rights, had the white vote in their the conservative white vote. The silent majority vote, right?
Southern states
and
still had them.
Just reactionary white people,
Yeah.
right? They had them in their pockets, the hard hats and all that.
Wait a second.
So once you have a constituency in your pocket, you can do stuff like establish the EPA, affirmative action, and complete the monetary policy that started the liberal left movement since the days of William Jennings Bryan. I could go on listing Richard. Oh, end the Vietnam War in a sense, or at least retreat troops from Vietnam. All of that he did, and lo and behold, a very dislikable Richard Nixon, one of the most dislikable human beings to ever be president, beat a very, very likable George McGovern 49 states to 1. Because the smartest way to win re-election is to convince your base that you're one of them, and so they'll support you no matter what they do, and then go get votes elsewhere. And that's what Bill Clinton did on the opposite side. Right? That's why Democrats are stupid. In spite of the fact that Democrats are smarter when it comes to science, when it comes to everything else. Republicans, if you do not do what you are told, as a that's why their politicians tremble.
Keep their guys in line.
You will be called a Republican name and only, like our inspector we mentioned before, and you'll be taken out. Right? That's why they keep and that's why, in spite of the fact that the demographics are moving to the left,
they got some party discipline, is what you're saying.
It's not just party discipline, dude. They keep their politicians are in line with whatever their orthodoxy is. Whereas Democrats typically will like, well, the Democrats are the good guys and the Republicans are the bad guys, so it's the lesser of two evils, so I'll vote for the Democrat no matter what. And then they're like, why does he keep doing things that are like not what Democrats want? I'm like, you're still supporting him no matter what, right? Yeah, that's why. You can't blame them. You can't blame your politicians if you're going to support them no matter what they do, because they're the good guys, and not even follow up on their policies or hold them accountable, right? That's the difference between Republicans and Democrats. That's why things have consistently moved in the conservative direction for the past 30 years, in spite of Obama. Sorry. Should we go back to the film?
Okay.
Should we? It's going to be an awkward transition.
Yeah, we just jump right into it, I guess.
What's next?
Movies.
What's next? I mean, we're talking about the 90s.
We're talking about the 90s. Oh yeah, I wanted to ask you a question because we were talking about the formula, the story structure that's been around for ages, right?
Wait, I'm just looking at him sweat right now.
There's no fan in here.
Are you upset? Are you upset about what are you upset about?
You want to know what I'm upset about? Honestly, yes, I clearly am upset.
Yeah. Do you think I'm being
true.
unfair to Barack Obama?
No. See, again, people personalize these things. Like, I don't even really give a damn who Barack Obama is. As far as I know, he's an alien.
Didn't you say that you hated him when you first saw him? Like you were the only guy who didn't like him?
Keep personalizing this. It's not about him.
You're saying people had too much expectation.
That's the obvious point. But even the deeper one, what I thought I just described, is that there's a deep-seated naivete within the I don't mean to be condescending to any, but like liberal left intellectual types, coastal types, educated types, when it comes to politics, that is shocking to me. And people sit back and wonder why their system is moving more and more to the right, when the dumbass is in voting Republican. They understand this, which is, you have to hold these people accountable. You can't sit there and be like, I believed in him. He said this slogan. He said this. Conservatives will be like, no. What are you going to do to? Oh, I don't know. Make sure to reverse Roe v. Wade. Down the way, they played the long game on that one. 30% of the American population believes in that retarded bullshit that women aren't allowed to control their bodies.
I don't think we're disagreeing.
30%,
I think we agree.
But because now you're looking at the policy. That wasn't the point, right? 30%.
I think you're saying people do not hold Democratic politicians accountable.
10% of the American people are against basic background checks on guns, right? More and more kids are dying. More and more random people are getting killed because, no, I'm serious. More and more random people are getting killed because people are like, well, why don't the politicians, are you going to support them next time? Yeah, I'm a Democrat. I do whatever the Democrats tell me to. Like, and it's like, and you're the guys with the education, right? And who believe in whatever slogan or whatever pretty face is put on the same old bullshit. And then you do it again, and then you do it again, and the country your political system moves, and it's the dumbasses, right? In the heartland, right? It's the conservative base that keeps outwitting you because they just are like, I'm only supporting this person if they do what I want them to do. Right? Take away women's rights to choose. don't come after, don't even start to go down background checks,
right,
et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. They're the minority, but they're apparently they're smart.
Looking at the policies.
It shocks me. It shocks me. And people turn it. So you like Obama? You dislike Obama? Like like I even know that guy, right? Anyway, I did not expect to get that heated about this.
Yeah, like the movies.
Movies.
How do we get back to on track after that?
On track.
You were asking me a formula
stuff.
stuff.
Movies. The story structure, the traditional story structure. The hero, the neophyte, and then his life gets disrupted, and he gets some sort of challenge. The traditional movie.
Yeah. Luke Skywalker.
You think that was invented or discovered? What I mean is, we like that because we've been seeing it since we were kids, and some guy invented it, or do you think inevitably, even if the Greeks or whoever didn't think of that, we'd still end up with that same formula?
Okay.
In other words, do you think there's other formulas that we have yet to discover, or are we doomed to just have that formula?
It's a good question.
Work?
I think that people connect to. Have you ever noticed that people are incapable of not talking about themselves? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, as in, people will tell us story. One time, I had a friend. Oh God, I hope he doesn't hear this. He's a very successful guy. He's one of these alpha guys in very alpha. He was basically like a bully in high school. Very alpha. And there was this other dude at our school who was like openly gay. Can I talk about this?
Yeah, of course.
Okay, so he's openly gay. He then became a very famous drag queen who actually won RuPaul's Drag Race. This kid we went to high school with. So I'm with my alpha friend, and we're talking about he's not even our friend, but we knew him from high school. He just won RuPaul's Drag Race. And then he says to me, he's like, God, it must be really hard for him. I'm like, what do you mean hard for him? He's a celebrity now. He just won. It's like, no, to have to hide yourself like that, have to hide yourself, hide who you really are. I'm like, but he's been openly gay for 20 years. I mean, he's not hiding himself at all. And he's like, and then he gets really upset. He's like, you don't know what it's like. Do you know what it's like to have to hide who you really, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So he's really talking about himself. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? That's the point of that story. Yeah. So you're asking me about the monomyth. That we connect to stories that are about us, about our experience. That's my point about Pulp Fiction, that the reason it's resonating, the reason it has to be in that order, that he becomes an ascetic monk at the end as like an old man. Not literally an old man. You see what I'm saying? It's reflecting our human experience. But now, is there only one kind of human experience? No, but I think there are certain universal qualities that we all connect to. I think that James Frazier, I think that's his name, the guy who wrote Hero of a Thousand Faces, what he did is he examined all these myths and found a kind of common structure that they have in common. But of course, they're all very different also, right? And so what George Lucas did is he said, okay, I'm going to base my story on on the monomyth. And that is why Star Wars is Star Wars. Yeah. Because it is following that to it. And not just following it like rigidly, but like figuring out, just like Frazier, like this is the reason this is working. Yeah. And that is why Star Wars, I think, is probably the most universally, I don't want to say loved, but universally, like every kid in every culture all over the world gets Star Wars.
Do they?
I believe so.
Do
you think so?
Star Wars, yeah.
I think it's everywhere, man. I don't know. Maybe I'm naive. I think it's everywhere. Now maybe there are cultures that would be like, "What the hell is this?"
Yeah, that's actually a good question. I'm not sure either way, but I would say part of it is that Bildungsroman feel that what you just talked about, the tracking of the trajectory of the personal, and then part of that, which is perfectly matched in terms of form, in terms of what it does in the medium, is this is the first like really significant CGI or digital filmmaking experiment, right? Because people went to the theaters, and this is why they invented the blockbuster. People went to the theaters and could not believe what the hell they were looking at, like just visually. And so wide-eyed,
it's brilliant visually, of course.
It has a little bit of what Goodfellas has, which is the story is about a wide-eyed kid looking onto this world and this personal trajectory, what you just described. And at the same time, the filmmaking captures that same, like, you know what I mean? Like, oh my God, what am I watching?
Yeah, but it's also capturing what you already know. Okay, there's this guy, he wrote, his name is Cyrus Patel. He was an NYU professor, and he wrote the foreword to Moby Dick. and he loves Star Wars, and he writes essays about Star Wars. He says there's something. He says what Star Wars is really about is technophobia. That is, the point of Star Wars is not the sci-fi technology; it's the Force, right? That we actually hate all this technology. But he also says like that the imagery and the story is like something deeply embedded inside you before you even see the movie. That's what the movie is connecting to. Yeah. It's connecting to something in you. And he uses the example of his son, who's never seen the movie, and keeps telling his dad that he has dreams about the man in the black mask. The man in the black mask, Darth Vader. He's never seen the movie.
Yeah.
Right? So like there's something in you, and there's something in the movie, and it's connected. It's connected.
So that story is not. That was my question. So that formula is not invented, rather it's discovered. It's something that would have been discovered anyway, because it's within us.
It's within you. Yeah, it's your DNA. Like you're seeing it on the screen, or you're seeing it in the story, and you're going, "That's me," or I get that. Now, what's interesting, I think, historically, because you're asking, well, do these things ever change? I think that when these big crises happen, like the 70s or like now, that it shakes things up, right? We leave peak dumb. Because peak dumb is kind of like, it's like sticking to the story too much, sticking to the formula too much. When these crises happen, people start to experiment and find new ways of expressing other parts of themselves that they maybe didn't have access to before, and we also get it. Like, we're more accepting of it. Like, No Country for Old Men, fucking, the end of the movie, the main character dies, you don't even see it.
Yeah.
Right. But because it's happening at that, this is my point about 2007, it's at that brief time of this is before we got into politics. I'm saying that brief time before Obama and in the last years of Bush, everyone was really awake, really, really fucking alert.
Yeah, for a couple of years there, like the end of Bush's second term.
The end of Bush's second term.
There was some real
shit
alertness
and thinking, yeah. And so when
a la early 70s.
A la early 70s. So when a movie comes along like No Country for Old Men, which the main character dies, you don't even see it, and then there's no music in the whole movie, and then the music comes on at the end, you go, whoa, because it's now it's connecting to something that it's connecting to something in you, but it's connecting to something that everyone is now kind of thinking about. Maybe the hero doesn't win. Maybe we're the bad guys. I mean, that's what was happening in America. Holy shit, we're the bad guys. We're the empire. I remember actually having this moment, like, I know this sounds like naive, but at one point in college, I was like, holy shit, we're not Greece, we're Rome. We're the fucking empire. We're actually bad, And I don't know why, I mean, it seems kind of, the rest of the world's like, yeah, you just figure that out. But it's kind of interesting when these things happen, these crises happen, people start to really re-examine. It's like Samuel Jackson and the Divine Intervention. Well, what does the Bible verse really mean? Why am I saying it? What am I doing with my life? You know what I mean? You start to think through things, and that's when these stories get a little more interesting.
Maybe it's after, their desire for destruction is filled. Like their thirst for destroying things, because people seem to be drawn to such things, because if you have peace for so long, they will find something to fight against. So, like you said, after 9/11, there was a lot of hatred, and at least they found a common enemy that kind of united them, and after a few years, they kind of woke up.
They woke up. Yeah. That's the last line of No Country for Old Men. Then I woke up. That's disillusionment. That's disenchantment.
Because of Vietnam,
Right.
It seems to come after, not after peace, but after violence.
Right, and
clarity.
One of those great awakening moments I always think about is The Matrix, right? That moment where Keanu Reeves awakens and looks out. The Matrix is a metaphor for so many different kinds of structures that we're all tied up in. But it's a scene that, we were talking about this, I think, Danny, where when you watch it, and I think with you as well, when you watch it that first time, everybody is befuddled. Like, what the hell is going on in this movie? Right? And then later, it was, it's awakening, right? Like this person just woke up to the reality of the world they really live in, which is very dark, where everybody's asleep around them and they're controlled, and from birth till death. And that's a metaphor for so many of the ways in which we live our lives, right? Passively, not even aware of, or not even if we know, we don't really think about the fact that we live on a grid, right? An electrical water grid. The fact that we live under the control of politics, media.
Right.
The fact that we You know what I mean? Sorry, that impassioned plea that I gave earlier was actually kind of about this. Like,
You're just saying people are not seeing it. They're not
like,
seeing the structure of what's
it's
causing
like
their
people
misery.
They know better, right? They know better. Like, people know that if I elect a politician, sorry, not to go back to this, but if I elect someone, if I support something, regardless of what that person does, it does not make rational sense for me to be mad that that person doesn't do what I asked them to do. I'll keep supporting here. I'll keep doing. You know, if you give money to somebody, I'll give you money no matter what. I'll give you money no matter what. And then they take that money and they do something that you don't want with it, and you're like, well, why did here's some more money? Like, doesn't make sense, right? But it's this like people know, we know we're in this matrix. We know about politics. We know about we know we're on a grid. We know we're being controlled by this or that, by narratives, of different kinds, and we willfully are asleep. Right, because even though we know we don't sit there and think about it. Right, we're not.
Yeah.
We're conscious of it, but we're not aware. There's some kind of distinction.
Yeah. This is reminding me more again of Samuel Jackson at the end. Right, it's like when you realize that you're in this, not in your own story, but that you realize that you're in a story kind of, and you see why things are not the way they are and how they're repeating, and then you go, wait a second, well, if I want a different outcome, I should do something different. Remember the Seinfeld episode where he says nothing's ever worked out with the tuna on rye, so I'm going to do everything the opposite.
Right, and it works out,
right?
At least briefly. But it's also because of the confidence he has that there's no neuroses. It's just like, hey, let me see how this works out. I'm going to go up to a girl and be like, I'm George, I'm unemployed, I live with my parents. And she's like, you're like no man I've ever met before, George. Because for a while, it's not going to last, but for a while there, he's getting laid, right? And, I mean, I'm sorry, like, I know everybody's kind of overreacting, possibly, I don't know if it's overreacting even, to the shooting that just happened. Right? But I was watching the videos of the reactions, like I remember 20 years ago being in high school in the States, and, like, having to do Code White and this and that, and having to prepare for the possibility, even just imagine the possibility of, like, people walking around, shooting up schools. And you're right, I mean, like, nothing new under the sun, right? As they say under Ecclesia, like, 20 years later, no political solutions, right? Because fundamentally, political solutions requires political will. And if you just do what you're told, right? If you're just asleep and you're willfully asleep, it's almost like it's like you're Neo. It's not that you're asleep, you're Neo, but you took what was the pill? The blue pill.
Blue pill.
And you go right back.
Yeah.
Knowing full well, whoa, there's an awakening here.
Right.
Now I want to go back to my cubicle. I want to go back to my
This is why people watch movies. Well, no, sorry. People watch movies to escape.
Yeah.
To escape their reality. But
people,
but great movies, what they do is they say, you came here for escape, but I'm going to give you the red pill.
Right.
You're going to, and this is why I think that story and the story and the story and the story is so key. Is that, and also in Inglourious Bastards. Okay, another example. Remember the Blind Man's Bluff card game?
Yeah.
And he's got King Kong, right? And he's guessing, and he's clearly, like, through his guessing, you can tell that he's like this, maybe not Hans Landa smart, but like definitely the smartest guy in the room, the Nazi German. And he's got King Kong in his head, and he's trying to guess the clues in order to get to King Kong. He goes, okay, was he put in chains? Okay, he's from a tropical place, so he's put in chains in a tropical place. And then they take him to America and they put him on an auction block or something like that. He doesn't say auction block, but you know what I mean. Yeah. All the things that are King Kong, and you don't even see it coming. It says, "Is this the story of the African American slave in America?" And people go, whoa, right? Not in the movie, of course, but the audience, because the whole movie is about Nazis and how bad Nazis are. And what he's doing in that scene is like, yo, by the way, you guys don't get off easy. You know what I mean?
You voted for Obama in 2012?
Absolutely.
That's what I thought. So I was just wondering, though, like...
What the... You're the one bringing us back.
No, I know.
Okay, all right. What do you really want to tell me? I'm naive because I believe the guy. Is that what you're trying to tell me?
No, because you continue to, after you continue to take the freaking blue pill. It's like...
Yes, I did. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. I don't mean...
I'm sorry. I did.
It's not just you personally. We haven't even known each other that many times. We've known each other a few months. It's just like... This is what I was like passionately arguing with a number of people for years and years and years, which is just
I said during the administration, I said give the guy a chance. He's under a lot of opposition. and he means
Of course
well.
he is, but this is
And
not
then
personal. It's
in the
not about
last
him.
5 years, I was like, yo, I don't think he actually cared.
What do you
Especially
care about
that
him as a
For a
person?
lot, I think from my
What
point
do you
of
care
view,
about him as a person? You don't know any of these people personally.
from my point of view, I don't think
You're right. You're right.
not in your cases, but I don't think the whole Democrat, Republican, or conservative, liberal argument is actually about being right or doing what's right.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's just about winning now at this point. It's
Yeah.
just I think they just thrive off the conflict.
I think Bernie cares about what's right.
I don't mean the politicians. I mean the people, the Democrats, the voters.
It's amazing how personal
And
everything
I
is.
think they're just getting their fill of conflict, or it's like what I said earlier. There's always the need for conflict and some sort of us and them.
Yeah.
And now that the war on terror is not relevant anymore, you need something to rally against.
Right. Tribalism.
Trump or Putin or something.
Exactly. So
Yeah, Putin really kind of. They were looking for they needed a story, and this guy came up with one for them.
Yeah, I mean
You know.
they will create one. I think all people, it's the human condition. I think you will create conflict.
See,
If it's not terrorists, then it's the Republicans.
See, by the way, another metaphor for that whole like a moment in film, kind of like Blue Pill, Red Pill, is the Clockwork Orange scene. You know, the famous one that Kubrick puts in a movie where somebody's having their eyes forced open, and film is being used to completely rewire their thinking. He's really talking about the power of cinema in a very, very frighteningly metafictional way. But you know, I think. It's like I know what you mean, but the analysis on the Republican side or on the conservative movement as to why they don't really care about anything other than winning is that they keep changing what they believe in. However, I think that's a product of the fact that they're hooked to media that forget 1 week something is caravan's coming and the world is ending, and then 2 weeks later, like, remember that distant memory of the caravan coming because there's a completely new obsession. Right? They have such short attention span that they literally don't remember that 10 years ago they were all into this thing called Tea Party. And then 5 years later they forgot about that and now they're into economic nationalism. And then some years later they're into whatever, But whatever they're into at that point in time, they are 100% committed that everybody has to get on page, even if it's the dumbest shit ever. And that's why the dumbest shit ever prevails.
I don't
compared to
think,
intelligent people.
I agree, but I don't think it's just the conservatives. That's what I mean. I think it's most of the people in the Western world, or at least modern world.
So I think
it's the television generation.
I think
you
on
only
the
think about
liberal,
what's happening today. That's it.
on the liberal side, it's more it's not so much that their views change so much that it's like, do they believe in anything? It's they have pretty much the same general set of views. It's that they won't fight for it because the constant assumption is politics is the art of the lesser of two evils. And the Democrats, the liberal guy, the center-left guy is the lesser of two, and I will always support the lesser of two evils. And for a lot of people, that's where the calculus ends. And it's surprising to me because, again, these are generally supposed to be...
But it's like you said earlier, a clue that they don't really care about the policies or
They
the
don't care.
morality about
They don't
it,
care.
the voters itself. I mean, is that Democrats as well? Is that they don't actually hold the politicians accountable?
That's my entire... That's
The
my
reason
thesis.
they don't, I say,
for
is because
my
it's
freak out
not,
earlier was my thesis.
That's what I'm trying to say is it's not that they really truly care about the change or the policy. They just need something to rally behind, and they have the
It's just
the
a
enemies over there.
mobilizer.
Yeah, and if a group of people really wanted to bring about change, they really fight for it. About the policy, it's not just about voting some guy in office and saying I've done my part.
Right.
You know what I mean? Black people like fighting for their rights
Right.
did much more. You know what I mean? In terms
Right.
of policy and action.
Right.
So Democrats, they don't want the things they claim to want as much as say black people fighting for their rights, or gay people fighting for their
Right.
rights. It's just something to rally behind, and it's something to get angry about, something to blame all the ills of the world on.
Right.
I
The
think
others,
it's also...
you know what I mean?
And it's
that
usually
the Republicans-
identity issues.
Sure.
It's
Sure.
I mean it's basically
On both
everything but
sides of
class,
it.
right?
Yeah, exactly. Anything but class.
Identity.
To
It's
distract
and then there's the
people from that.
anti-gun thing, which is obviously there's good reason for it.
Yeah.
But these are not left issues. These are cultural issues
Reasonable.
that are not about class.
I got you. Yeah.
And my point about the Democrats or the Team A,
Cultural
Team B
borders.
thing is the Democrats are really representing finance. They're really representing finance. That's what Team A is. They're representing Wall Street. Now, Team B,
Industrial.
right? They're more Republicans. They're not exactly. They're fine with, I mean, they always cutting taxes and whatever, but they're a little bit different. They're not exactly the Wall Street guys, and this is why you see Steve Bannon going after Wall Street a lot, they're a different elite group. Industrial capital versus finance capital, like you're always bringing up. So anyway, I think we're all in agreement basically, which is that none of these guys give a shit about what the fuck they're talking about. They're just using it to mobilize people. But for some reason, you're right. The Republican base does somehow get results because they keep chipping away, and they
Well, it's also
maybe they know like. We got to give them something. We got to take away Roe versus Wade. We got to prove our loyalty to these.
Well, it's also they have this. So both sides also have this cult of personality thing, which we've also seen at different times in Ethiopia, right? Which is cult of personality is it's all about how do you feel about this person, their wife and the fashion sense of this person and the charisma when they speak and the life story. And I remember people telling me, Obama, in 2008, like really smart people, I thought, being like, wouldn't you want to like hang out with Obama? Like he would like hang out with us and like smoke weed with us, like blah blah blah. And I'm like, do you understand like how important freaking healthcare is? Do you understand how important financial issues are? At least consult this. At least think about this before you go in. And but this whole because you do understand these people's personalities are very carefully constructed, right? Mm. You're basically allowing yourself to be manipulated. You're taking the blue pill. You're taking the blue. This is what so many films are really about. Should we talk about Will Smith?
It's your rodeo.
So Will Smith, since we were on the 90s discussion, Will Smith. So in the book I'm working on, right, which is about James Joyce, right, and the Irish experience is a colonial experience, and how the universal, especially the universal experience of colonial subjects, is contained within the particular, right? Like you were saying, talking about monomyths and the myth of the universal myth of this and the gods this and that and that.
Yeah.
Right? Similarly, right? James Joyce says the same thing. Ulysses is the title of a book, and it's structured like the Odyssey, but it's just a guy hanging out in Dublin on a random day in the summer of 19 something, and it's riveting because that guy is it's all the stories, according to this teacher who passed away a few years ago, I'm dedicating this book to, are really about the life of intellect versus the life of instinct, like the upwardly mobile, uppity character coming from a position of subjugation, and the one who just kind of accepts their position and is at least has the authenticity thing going for them, right? And this same internal tension exists in like feminism. It exists in all these different experiences in Judaism, right? In all these different experiences of the historical subject, and that's what I mean by universals contained within the particular, right? Like all these different historical subjects have the modernist and the traditionalist debates between African scholars, right? Fanon on the one hand, someone like Mamdani on the other. Right?
Everyone's got their own version of it, but it's the same dynamic.
Right. Like African scholars like Mamdani or Mamadou Diouf would probably be like, all this like defining Africa by our traditional role, so we should remain peasants and not have electricity and shit. Like we have to modernize. They're defining us. That's Mamdani's whole point. They're defining Africans, colonials define Africans in order to keep them down based on their most retrograde. And then the other side is Fanon and others being like the African elite. They're trying to be like Westerners. They're Sem Ben Ousmane. They're trying to be like. So this is the internal tension, and this keeps being reproduced so much that my theory is this is why certain groups remain in positions of power and others don't, because there's such a intensity that results from anybody trying to rise out of a position of subjugation. There's such an intensity to that clash that it results in the reproduction of the same.
Did you read the essay by the guy who wrote 12 Years a Slave yet?
No, I went looking for it because you said this is a good example of.
Well, yeah, I hate this guy. His name is John Ridley,
Go ahead.
and he basically has an essay in Esquire that he wrote before. Have you seen 12 Years a Slave?
Yeah.
So the guy who wrote that movie is the guy who wrote Three Kings, and also Undercover Brother. He's probably connected to some agency of some kind. I mean, it's a pretty shady background.
Who is it?
Anyway, he writes an essay in Esquire, and the headline of the essay.
It's a novel that it's based on.
Well, hold on a sec. So, 12 Years a Slave is based on a slave narrative by a real guy named Solomon Northrop.
Oh, the slave himself.
Yeah.
The slave himself.
For 12 years.
Yeah. And
that's key, right? Because most slave experiences lifelong.
That book, yeah.
Right. This guy's an elitist who experiences it almost like an adventure for 12 years and then gets to go.
Yeah, I think it's really relevant to your book and what you're talking about. So, so the director is that British guy, Steve McQueen, who's cool as shit.
He's a great director.
Great director, and somehow whatever I think the studio said John Ridley has to have this. So they're working together, but they hate each other. If you watch the
Right.
Oscars,
Right.
when John Ridley got the award for the best adapted screenplay, Steve McQueen like clapped like there's a meme of this because he clapped so ungenuinely.
Not that we're not used to seeing black men fight each other at the Oscar, have conflicts at the Oscars.
So here's my point about John Ridley. John Ridley, when he read that slave narrative, it matched up with what he's been arguing in his essays, which is that I'm gonna get in trouble for saying this. He's basically saying these N-words are making us look bad, like the Bill Cosby. Yeah, and he even writes in his.
Oh, you mean the people are making it?
Yeah, as in these lower class black people who he calls them by the N-word in his Esquire essay.
Chris Rock did something similar, right?
Black people versus-
It's like that, but
respectability politics.
Respectability stuff, but he's doing it in not like there's no like funny edge to
Right,
it.
right,
It's
right.
just like straight
Obnoxious,
up
yeah.
obnoxious elitism. In Esquire, he's writing this, basically stating like his thesis of his experience, which is these N-words are making us look bad,
Because that's the irony of 12 Years a Slave. Slave is usually,
and
for
that's
most people,
what
it's a
the point
permanent
of the movie.
status.
Exactly.
Right?
It's not
like,
about
hey,
slavery.
I'm this uppity black guy, but
Right.
I went down.
I
the,
don't
the rabbit
deserve.
hole.
I don't deserve to
Right,
be
right.
treated like them. I
Right,
can
right.
play the violin. You see how he's
Right,
injecting
right.
his.
How many people have actually been 12 years a slave?
Right.
Most people are
Slavery
either
is
a
an
slave or they're
institution
not.
of millions of people who don't get to leave.
Generation upon generation upon generation. Right?
Now, the reason it works, by the way, as a movie is because it does have that structure, right? He starts off a normal guy.
Right.
He's taken into, he goes into the green world, then he comes back out, right? But it's also matching up with this dude's like weird, like elitist attitudes, which are the real crime of slavery is that this guy who can play the violin and read is being treated like all them.
Mm-hmm.
Instead of that, everyone's being treated like that.
I mean, it's funny
that,
that you
that,
mentioned
that
because
is his. You should read his as John Ridley.
Absolutely, the few slave narratives. You make a very important point because the few slave narratives that we really associate with Hollywood are the documentary Roots. I remember Chicken George. I remember one or two other characters, but really it's Kunta Kinte, who again does not start off a slave, right? That's the beginning of the cycle.
He's a king,
right? He's taken over there, right? Yeah. And so he goes down the rabbit hole. Another one is when Spielberg was, I think he was pressured after Schindler's List, is my understanding. Hey, well, how come you don't make a slavery movie since nobody's done that, and you just did a Holocaust?
I think that's first of all. I think Amistad is fantastic.
It is.
And
No,
I think there's a lot of.
I'm not saying otherwise. He was just. My understanding is there was some pressure on Spielberg, like, hey, somebody hasn't done a slavery movie yet.
I think he wanted to. What pressure?
Again, I'm not saying anything. Did I say anything bad about Spielberg anyway? Just so Amistad is a very good film. The reason it works, as you say, is again, it's about somebody going down the rabbit hole, right? It's not about somebody who starts and ends in the same place of enslavement, right? Because that wouldn't be a difficult film for for an audience to appreciate on that level, right? Yeah. But that's most experiences of slavery. It's not you started off in Amistad. You just started off. In Gambia, like Kunta Kinte, or you started off like Solomon, you know what I mean, and you went down the rabbit hole, right?
Mm.
You always, it's a permanent condition,
yeah,
right?
you
still haven't seen that.
You have to relate with the protagonist.
Right.
And then he goes through some shit.
Right.
You cannot have him like start with the protagonist you cannot relate with from the beginning.
Right.
You know what's a really interesting, maybe, I mean, we can, I'm just kind of thinking out loud here. I honestly think that Shawshank Redemption has, like, I think it's one of the best movies of all time, and I think it's getting at something really, really deep and spiritual, which is like liberation, basically, like your personal liberation. But what's interesting is it actually breaks the mold of this. You don't see this dude's life. You don't see him as a banker. You start right off with Shawshank Redemption. He's in prison already. I mean, you see the trial, like, sort of.
Yeah.
But it's all about being in prison.
Yeah.
And learning to adapt in prison, and then he makes his escape.
Yeah.
Sorry, did you guys want to add to the Shawshank Redemption thing?
Even though you don't see him outside of prison, the fact that he's still new in prison,
right? He's
still makes him very relatable.
Yeah, he's neophyte.
Yeah.
You're
like
going
you
through it
20
with
years
him.
Right.
Exactly.
He's the latest
Exactly.
guy to get to the prison.
Yeah, and that's
Morgan
important.
Freeman's
That's
the
why you
old school.
relate.
Yeah.
Exactly. And you see the whole process.
Yes.
But that's also why he has a mystique to the other prisoners. You notice Andy he's kind of off in his own world. And it's like, why is he here again? Why is he not drinking? Everybody else is drinking. He's like, no, I quit drinking because drinking is one of the reasons he ended up getting blamed for the murder of his wife or something.
Yeah. Dude, people watch that movie and, like, they come out, like... people get tattoos of the...
mind fuck of
the
rock hammer?
Yeah, the rock hammer. Dude, when I left my job at NYU, I worked in a basement for 10 years. And I couldn't stop thinking about Shawshank Redemption. I'm like, I finally have chiseled my way out. I've chiseled my way out.
Not literally. And there was sewage.
Well, the thing is that my job was in a base, so it kind of looked like Shawshank Redemption. Like, it felt like a prison. You know? Yeah. Now, check this out. This is something I got sort of into lately. Is if you look at the alphabet is based on pictograms.
Right.
And they're in a specific order, right? It's A, B, C, D. It's not a random order. It's not just like a bunch of letters.
Linear order.
There is a linear order.
One order.
Now, if you look at that, this is like a really weird kind of like end of Usual Suspects moment for me. And maybe I'm insane. Maybe I'm seeing something that's not there. Mm-hmm. But if you look at the sequence of the original letters, I mean, not the ABC, but like the pictograms they're based on, which is a Phoenician alphabet, and they have specific, very, very kind of tangible meanings.
Right. Capital R is Ras, which looks like a profile of a head. You notice that, right? If you look at the profile of a head, like a human head, you have a line here. Yeah. You have what looks like that's in a lot of languages, including in
Wait, which letter is this?
Capital R.
Oh, okay, yeah.
So that looks like Ras, like head, because that's a head in profile.
Sure,
that's what
the head.
Picture of it, just
exactly.
as an example.
Right.
There's a bunch
just
of
like that. Just like that.
Is Ras mean head in any other language?
I mean,
so it's Semitic?
in a lot of like Semitic languages, this is one of those.
Yeah.
Capital R is, anyway.
So it starts with, actually in Semitic language it's Abu Gida, right?
Yeah.
Is it the same in Amharic?
Yeah. Abu Gida, yeah.
Abu Gida. So it's Aleph, Alpha, which is like an ox, and there's Beit, which is a house.
Rip.
Then there's Gimel, and Dalit. Dalit is a door, and Gimel is a kind of either a throwing. It's a kind of implement of sorts, right? Now check this out. The places that they found the oldest like inscriptions of the alphabet are these mining quarries in Sinai. It's called Proto-Sinaitic alphabet. Am I telling you something? Are you hearing this for the first time, or you already know this?
No.
So the earliest inscriptions they found of what we call the alphabet are on these places that were basically slaves mining stuff for the Egyptians or whoever, and that's the earliest forms of the alphabet. Now here's where I have my like weird revelation. So I'm like I think I was like watching Shawshank Redemption. I was reading about the alphabet, and I started like looking at the pictures, and I was like, hold on a second. If you because what a movie is, it's just a sequence of pictures, right?
Yeah.
That's why when you do a storyboard, like a comic book, essentially, right?
Like a storyboard, yeah.
Picture.
Yeah.
So if you take these pictograms of the alphabet, it kind of tells the story of it tells the story of breaking out of something. It starts with you're in this house and you got this implement. And then there's literally one of I could show you if I know you're looking at me like I'm crazy. One of the letter after Dalit, I can't remember what it is, but yeah, but like the original pictogram is a guy doing like this. Sorry, they can't see me.
Yeah,
he's holding his arms up in exaltation as if he's just become free, like the fucking like the iconic poster of Shawshank Redemption.
So you're saying it's
I'm
like
not
a
saying
liberational?
Yes, I think it's a code. I think the alphabet was originally a code for how to break out of slavery or prison, and that it had so much it had practical value.
See, if Dan Brown had this kind of source material, he could have made an actually really great book, instead of a complete piece of shit like the Da Vinci Code.
No.
Somehow convince people. Don't tell me you like the Da Vinci Code.
What?
You were gonna say something about the Da Vinci Code?
No, I want to talk about the fucking alphabet.
Continue. Oh, is it when you respond? Go ahead. Tell us.
I mean, although those Opus Dei is a real thing.
Yes, I think everybody.
Is she? Okay, so the alphabet. I'm saying I think if you look at the sequence of pictures, it's like a movie. It is telling a story. It's a sequence, and it's telling the sequence of breaking out of something. Because at the end, and midway through, there's like rivers that have to be crossed, and then at the end there's like you make this sign. The very last pictogram is a cross, which means like a seal. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, and if you think about modern slavery, modern I mean like, I know there's still slavery, but like 12 years of slave time,
Right.
19th century, African American, they had all these codes of how to tell each other how to escape. Like like spirituals like wade in the water, right?
Songs, yeah.
They're telling you there's a code in there, like you got to go through the water to get to the other, right?
Sure.
And
That's really interesting.
you know what I'm saying? And you know, and I honestly believe that some of the greatest innovations culturally they come from the bottom up,
Oh yeah.
like hip hop, and you know what I mean. And then they get kind of
co-opted.
and brought back down. Now here's what's interesting about the Phoenician alphabet. So the Phoenicians are basically always trying to get independence. The Phoenician, by the way, includes Israel and Lebanon. They're all called. They don't even call themselves Phoenician. They call themselves Canaanites, and they're very they're basically becoming a merchant group in the between 2000 and 1000 BC. But they're not really free yet from Egypt. Egypt is still like the. So what happens in the late Bronze Age collapse is that all the major cities and empires fall. The Hittites, this other major city that was their competitor, Ugarit, Egypt, they all fall because these people come from all the places that the Phoenicians have been trading with, and they're called the Sea People, and they all somehow know how to communicate with each other. And the one place is they don't overthrow the Phoenicians, right? They know how to communicate with each other. How would they know how to communicate with each other? Because the Phoenicians are using the alphabet. Because the alphabet, in addition to this pictogram thing I'm talking about, as a writing system, more importantly, its real significance is it's like an original Google Translate, right? Because it's Phoenician phonetics, right? Phonemes. Because it's recording. What did this guy say? He said, Jew. Sorry, jibbity jabbity Jew, right? You write that down. This is what he said. Then you have a translator come. Okay, that's what that means, right? With phonetics is it's like a technology in a way. It's a technology of how to communicate with people you don't know how to talk to.
So this is where we get phonics.
Phonetics,
which is what you have to learn in alphabet. See, one of the arguments why people think alphabet is the most advanced form, and that everything, including like Amharic and other Cyrillic or Guz and other Cyrillic alphabets, are not as advanced, right? Because they're simplified. It's like 26 letters. And I'm like, yeah, there's only one problem with that, though. I remember being a kid, I had to sit there and learn something called phonics, right? Phonics was the fact that PH together is not it's F, right? And you also have to learn something called spelling, which is so complicated that they literally have intense competition.
This is why I think Semitic languages are superior.
That's what I'm saying. Amharic,
it's much simpler.
Once I learned I remember it's so complicated. I'm like, I just have to memorize.
This is called, by the way,
which is not that hard to do. It only took me a few weeks because I didn't have to learn any spelling or any phonics.
Right.
So in a sense, it's simpler.
So what the Phoenicians are, because they are Semitic, remember. So what they're doing is they're taking the alphabet. So when you talk about the alphabet, like learning in school, you're talking about English Roman letters.
Yeah.
But the original alphabet is for Semitic languages, right? And Semitic languages, which include Gez, it includes Hebrew, Greek is a bit derived, a little bit, even though the language itself, the letters are derived. The letters are derived from the writing system, the language is Indo-European. The point about, I totally agree with what you're saying about Semitic languages. They have something called inflection, which means that the meaning, that you have the three-letter roots of every word. So all the words that are kind of like each other are sort of like each other. Like you can infer what something means if you know the three-letter roots.
Right. Inflection is also used for like conjugations. Like a lot of Roman, even Latin tends to be more inflection compared to not compared to Semitic languages, but compared to English. English is one of the least. English is almost entirely,
which makes it harder to learn, harder to convey.
Because you actually have to learn
less
through
deep
placement. Yeah, exactly, less deep, right? Because you have to convey the language through the placement. Like if you take a bunch of words in an Amharic sentence and you jumble them up, you pretty much figure out what the meaning is.
Yes.
Take a bunch of words in an English sentence and you jumble them up.
Yes.
You're completely confused.
It's
right?
ideal.
It's the placement,
Maybe the sentence, the meaning of the sentence.
Like the construction of words together into a sentence.
It's ideal for commerce. It's ideal for communicating with people you don't know. But it's also ideal for, like, if you think about, like, I'm holding up my phone right now. If you think about the chips in your phone, right? Or in the computers, they're getting smaller and smaller, but they're holding more information. Semitic, like what linguists say about Semitic languages is that they literally like hold more
information.
Like this trilateral, it's like a chip that holds more knowledge, which is why I believe, like we still tell everyone in the world who's even not Semitic tells Semitic stories, which is the Bible. You know what I mean? And the places that you see the Semitics are. Which is a language group, by the way. I don't believe in ethnicity or whatever. This is a language. It's a technology. Yeah. So the places you find Semitic languages originally it's called North Semitic, which is Israel, Canaan, kind of connecting the Mediterranean over to the Persian Gulf on the north side, and then there's something called South Semitic, which is what you guys speak. And there's all these, but the other thing about South Semitic is it also expands on the southern side of Arabia, and it's also heading over to the Persian Gulf. Like Socotra, they speak a South Semitic language, and all along the South Arabia, what's called Hadramaut, right? Hadramaut?
I don't know.
Like the Alamudi is from Hadramaut.
Oh,
okay. So Yemen has two parts, right? One is on the Red Sea, and one's on the. So all these Semitic languages are like little ants that are heading over to the Persian Gulf, and what's in the Persian Gulf is probably the most ancient civilization and most advanced civilization, which was the Sumerians, who we know nothing about. But, I mean, we know that they invented a bunch of shit, and they're more advanced the further back in time you go. And
centered on Kuwait.
Yeah, no, but here's the other thing is that the Persian Gulf like flooded pretty recently. So like, and this is where all the flood myths come from. The Garden of Eden is Edenu, the Gilgamesh, right? Enki. Even I'm starting to think Book of Enoch might even be related to their god Enki, because it's the same two-letter.
Sumerian god?
Yeah, Sumerian god. Even their gods were called Yah, right? Jah. Like so much stuff comes from Sumeria. But the thing about them is they spoke a language isolate, which means it's not connected to anything else, which is what also makes them an incredible mystery. But the way we understand the people that came and kind of inherited their civilization was called Akkadian, and they did speak Semitic. So if you ask my opinion, Semitic languages are somehow holding this knowledge. They're transferring this knowledge from this ancient civilization in Sumeria. But the alphabet, I think, comes from slaves. I think it's the code telling how to get out of slavery. And what the Phoenicians did is they took that code and they mashed it with the Semitic language. And
this is
that's
great.
how you make a pizza pie.
Thanks for that. And we're going to pick up with that when we get to the stuff we were going to do on that episode on Egypt and red and black.
The red and the black.
So we'll hold off on that.
Look at the.
We'll hold off on that in a second, but. It's just because you got back to the slave thing, which is how we got off. Remember, I was talking about Will Smith and this concept, right?
Oh,
you mentioned John Ridley. So real quick now, Will Smith, this Irish storyteller, James Joyce, probably the greatest writer in the English language in the 20th century, even though he came from a subjugated people, which is not unlike being considered the greatest writer in the English language coming from Nigeria or coming from another British colony that happens to be black, right? Because the Irish thought it was black. So it's a very subversive thing. It's like a
makes total sense to me.
Right.
Makes total sense.
It's a real testament to the possibilities of liberation and also, you know, all that spitting down on people and they actually end up. So
because they're the ones actually seeing stuff, like black people in America. They're actually seeing the system.
Right. They got the Habash eyes, as you call it. Yeah. So his whole thing is there's always this contrast between the life of intellect, the uppity, this upward social mobility, and in the Will Smith chapter I refer to Carlton Banks, right, who's and also an object of resentment. There's a lot of I start off in the book talking about insults, right? Uncle Tom, this and that. The one that it's used in James Joyce's West Britain, which is basically an Irish person who's trying to be English.
Yeah.
And then there's
Twinkie.
Right.
Oreo.
And Carlton Banks. Literally, Carlton Banks, that character from Fresh Prince, is if you go into the inner city in a lot of black cities. Any kid who has an education, any guy like Kidus or me, any black guy who seems uppity or seems bougie or seems educated, immediately Carlton Banks, right? Because Carlton Banks is, yes, smart, ambitious, business-minded, and also square-headed, short, screams like a woman, doesn't play basketball, and these two things are and not really black. There's a really disturbing flashback scene in black and white in Fresh Prince where Carlton discovers that he's black when he's like 6 years old. He's like, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that, I'm going to do this. And his father, young, lean Uncle Phil, goes, man, it's going to be great to see a black kid. And Carlton goes, I'm black. And the laugh track explains, but there's a nervousness about that. Like, well, so all those things he just said aren't really black, right? There's kind of, I don't know if the show endorses that view, but it's really exploring that question with that character, right?
The creators of the show are Jewish, by the way, right?
Yeah, I think Quincy Jones is also a main.
Quincy Jones producer, yeah.
Quincy Jones is one of the main.
But some of the showrunners,
Yeah,
I always see Jewish names on it.
Yeah, but that's typical.
That's
I'm
true.
sorry, no, I mean, that's what they tell me. I don't know much about Hollywood, but my Jewish Hollywood friends tell me that everybody in Hollywood is Jewish. Hollywood producers. That's what I'm told. I know that's like an ugly stereotype.
I'm walking out right now.
No, I know that's
So
like an ugly
offended.
stereotype, but that's what it, that, like, literally, Jewish people I knew who grew up in Hollywood, who, you know, they always, anyway.
Yeah. I mean,
So at the end of almost every episode that is centered on Will and Carlton's relationship, which is at the center, you know, the tough kid from West Philadelphia and the bougie, annoying kid from you know, the spoiled, stuck-up kid, it either has Will saying there, hey, maybe I should be more like Carlton. I should dress better. I should be more, you know, I should speak a certain way. To get good jobs and make good money, right? And or it's Carlton going, hey, maybe I should be more like Will, so I could get girls, so I could be cool, so I can get into the black fraternity that shuns him in one of the episodes, right? And so it's like Will or Carlton. Well, this is what I call Black 22, right? This contradicted, like, do you rise up or do you stay down, right? Which is the human condition, but it's especially expressed when you start off at a lower position, right? When you're at a lower. So that's really all the book is about, and so this is how Will Smith and Carlton Banks play into it, right? Now, back to James Joyce real quick. There's a story called The Dead, which is one of the most beautiful and often quoted stories in the English language. It's the last story in a collection he wrote called Dubliners. And there the parallel is there's this guy named Gabriel, who's the Carlton Banks character, right? He goes to a dinner party. Huh?
West Britain.
Yes, he goes to a dinner party. And the woman there, nothing really happens throughout the story. Like, literally, it's a very famous story where him and his wife go to a dinner party in Dublin in, I don't know, 1905, and there's nothing happening except people having conversations, all very subtle. And then some older woman there goes up there and goes, West Britain. She keeps pissing him off. Like, she's getting under his skin. And that's her way of calling him back. Like, oh, you think you're one of the... Just because he's not even an intellectual type. He's like an ambitious, upwardly mobile businessman type, right? Okay, then he goes home with his wife. Long, you know, beautiful walk, blah, blah, blah. And before she goes to sleep, she tells him about this dead lover of hers. This young lover, this kid who died young, who she was in love with. And it's very much suggested, like, you'll never be him, right? You're my husband, but I will always love that man more than you. And his name is Michael Fury.
Oh, right.
You remember Michael Fury? It's a very famous thing, right? And it's one
yes.
of the ending of The Dead is one of the most beautiful passages in the history of the English language. It's breathtaking to read. And she falls asleep, and Gabriel, he's not angry, he's not envious, he's not jealous, but there's what Evan Bolton, my teacher, who taught us this, called insufficiency. Like, there's an emptiness there. There's a disconnect. He's seeking connection to the memory. So he looks out his window and he imagines the ghost of this young Irish, authentic, true, you know, dead martyr, right? Who's traversing the Irish countryside as the snows fall on all the living and the dead.
And that's Will Smith.
See, that's where we started off, right? Carlton Banks is Gabriel. Will Smith. So then Will Smith slapped Chris Rock.
Yes.
About a month ago.
Yes.
This is the postscript that I added to the book.
Yes.
Will Smith slapped Chris Rock, and I don't really follow celebrity culture. I haven't liked Will Smith since. So this is a key point. When we were really young, our age group, 5, 6, 7 years old, even in Ethiopia, even family members of mine in Europe used to say they used to rush home to watch the coolest show with the coolest guy. Will Smith was the guy everybody wanted to be like in the early 90s.
Yeah.
In the mid-90s, a bunch of things happened, which we were talking about before. These reactions, anti-reactions, you know, Kurt Cobain and the this and the that. But long story short, in hip-hop, this is expressed with the violence and the gangster stuff with Tupac in it. And by the time I was 12, 13, partly it's because by then you're a little more mature, we were listening to Eminem, we were listening to Tupac, we were listening to Jay-Z, and we thought Will Smith, especially his music, was a bozo. And even white audiences, I mean, Eminem makes fun of him because he went on this is the irony of the slap, right?
Yeah.
He went on an award show and said, I don't need to sell profanity in my records, as if Tupac and Eminem and the others do, right? And that's what Eminem says. Well, I do, and that's Eminem.
All of a sudden, Will Smith seems like Carlton Banks.
This is where we're going with this, right? Because Eminem is like Eminem is actually the corny, literally white guy, right? Like who's playing the same, and he's the one who's cursing and well I do so I feel, and Will Smith kind of becomes a joke. You know, The Lock says no more shiny suits, no more shiny suits. We're done with this shit, right? And he gets goofier, especially when he starts doing Wild Wild West, and it's like, and that's part of the reason he had to beg for an Oscar for like 20 years. Is he always had an image problem, even when he was nominated for Ali. He's a good actor, but he was seen as this guy has no edge. He's even mainstream white audiences started seeing him that way. Then there's the whole Augustin Senna thing, and a lot of this stuff gets dug up now to explain this random act of clearly frustration, right? Simp energy, whatever you want to call it. He's cuckolded. He's crying on a video. One of the more interesting, self-reflected, candid moments in all this is when he goes on The Breakfast Club. I don't know the exact year, but I literally put the link in the chapter of the book, in the postscript of the book, which is go listen to what he talks about when what his whole infatuation with Jada, why she has power over him. It has to do with Tupac. He goes on The Breakfast Club, and he very candidly, I give him a lot of credit for this. He really opened himself up. He was like, I never could have a conversation with Pac. I couldn't approach him. He goes, I wasn't man enough. I couldn't handle it. Because Jada and Pac had loved each other. They knew each other as kids. They grew up together. Jada always looked at him a certain way, as did the whole culture. And once they got older and it was possible for them to have a relationship, Jada was already with Will. And then Pac dies, right? And he literally goes, Will Smith goes, I was a soft rapper from Philly and he was Pac. And he opens his hands up like, you know what Tupac represents. Tupac is the closest to a Christ figure in black popular culture in the 80s, 90s, 2000s. I know that's goofy, but
no,
it's
absolutely.
the closest we have
100%.
to a Christ figure, right? Is he died for the streets. He's a throwback to the militancy of the 70s, right? And Will Smith is expressing this. And as I'm watching this, I'm going, oh shit, Will Smith literally just became full arc to being Carlton Banks, right? Literally, this is why
Tupac is Michael Fury.
Tupac is Michael Fury, right? And now it's Will who's Gabriel, and there's a lot of candid. I mean, Gabriel's not an annoying guy. He's kind of a cool guy. Yeah. He's very quiet. He's looking out that window, and he's very candid. And this is why when Joyce says the universal is contained within the particular, when you say these myths, these personal trajectories are played out in so many of these stories, including Pulp Fiction, right? There's like an archetype. There's like a set. It's like, dude. Literally, I just saw Will Smith express in that very poignant Breakfast Club interview, Black Radio, the ending to a very famous story about Irish people in Dublin 100 years before with the love triangle with the dead, authentic guy and the outwardly ambitious, right? So by the end, his story arc is complete, right? So anyway.
I love that.
Yeah, it's very interesting. The fact that he started out as the cool black guy and he ended up as Carlton. It's true.
It might be a factor.
But he's also trying to get that cool back by, or maybe he's just snappy, I don't know. But he went and slapped the host of the Oscars to defend his wife's honor, I guess.
I don't think it was calculated. I don't think he was thinking like, I'm going to be cool.
No, not at all. I think it's, yeah.
Well, here's the thought.
But the other thing is like, like you said, he started off cool, then he became corny, and he's still corny, but like he went and did the most, you know what I mean? He got, can I say this? He got ghetto with him.
You get to say you got ghetto with him.
You know what I mean? Not in the, as in like he went and violently attacked the
Jewish people
host.
get to say ghetto. Other white people can't say ghetto.
Yeah, by the way, the first ghetto, for those who don't know, is in Venice. It's where they kept the Jews, the ghetto islands.
Because Jewish people have a whole history of ghetto.
Yeah, you know, that was
you guys
wild.
get to say ghetto. Other white people don't get to say ghetto.
So you're also saying is like right after it happened, if it was a white host, he wouldn't have done it. No
A, if it was a white host, he doesn't get to do it. B, if he does do it, everybody freaks out. They certainly don't applaud him, and I'm pretty sure the cops take him out. Or like, because there was some question of security, like, should he be allowed to? And everybody's like, yes, and he gives a self-aggrandizing speech, which is the part I didn't like. Yeah, but going back to Carlton Banks, how does Will become Carlton Banks? There is one of the better episodes of one of the more poignant, memorable episodes of Fresh Prince is the one where Will gets shot in an ATM, and Will is taking it okay. He's trying to be strong for Carlton because Carlton is shaken by this. Shaken, he's pampered, he's spoiled, and he comes to the hospital and was like, "Dude, Carlton, this is life, you know. Shit happens. I'm okay." And Carlton's like, no, why is it this way? Why does that guy get to shoot? He doesn't know how to react. He snaps. He's the cornball guy, right? Like, he doesn't know what to do. And so Carlton goes out and gets a gun. And he's gonna go get revenge, and then Will's like, "Please, Carlton."
This was on the Fresh Prince.
Yes, this is one of the this is one of those what they in the '90s they used to call this a very special episode. Remember, when comedy sitcoms would have occasionally a very dramatic episode. They did them very well on Fresh Prince once in a while. But he grabs the gun, and Carlton leaves, and Will just sits on his hospital bed, very poignant moment, and just weeps, right? Like, we can't get out of this. Even my cousin, who was spared this bullshit that I had to deal with as a kid. The minute he sees it, he can't get out of the trap of the cycle of violence, right? Is what he's saying with his tears, right? And, Carlton looks pretty ridiculous snapping like that. But it's a lot of that frustration of, it's not really that he wants to go out and kill those guys or whatever. It's that he doesn't know how to deal with the fact that this is a reality that other black men are dealing with. Yeah. That he realizes he's Carlton at that point. Like, that's when he realizes he's Carlton. The fact that Will just got shot, that this is normal, that to him in his little bougie... bubble life, he can't really. To me, that's Will Smith slapping Chris Rock is like not knowing how to express that frustration, the emasculation or the shame of being that character, right?
If Will Smith then was the Carlton figure, I think the Will Smith figure is Dave Chappelle. Because he's ever since he came back, the Netflix special now, he does play that character, right? He represents black people, so he kind of speaks for them in a way. The real black people.
But what's funny is he says in one of these new shows, he says, "I let people think I was from."
Yeah,
I let people think I was from the projects. Yeah. I grew up in the suburbs.
Yeah.
But I let them think that so that the streets would embrace me. Yeah. That's what he said.
He says that semi-jokingly. He's a character who's... The reason he has that kind of perspective is he was in the 80s in Washington, D.C. During the crack epidemic. His father, who he didn't live with consistently, is a farmer from Ohio, or lived in a farm in Ohio. His family, Chappelle is a very bougie-sounding name, right? Yeah. Chappelle? Yeah. He's the first in his family not to go to college. He spent a decent amount of time in the suburbs, though they moved around, and his mother was an advisor to Patrice Lumumba. Right. So
cool.
Right. So he's from a certain background that is not that is not random.
But he played it the other way.
Right.
Yeah, and he even says I let people think that. And then at one point it's really funny. He goes, "People, I do these jokes about the hood or whatever. I don't know what it's like to live in the hood. Yeah. Right. I have no idea."
Right. Yeah, especially when you look at his career, though. A lot of other black comedians, they start out, doing stand-up for black communities. With Def Jam and whatever. Right. So, but with Chappelle, I think he started out playing the black guy for white audiences.
I think it was
the college. His earliest.
The college, because you remember he breaks out with the stoner movie Half Baked.
But also he's in Robin Hood Men in Tights.
Yes, he is. Yeah. So he's playing for that audience, which is kind of the multicultural audience. Like a lot of Half Baked, there's a black guy, there's a white guy, there's a Hispanic guy. They're all kind of brought together by weed, and they're but he's it's a very rare film, class wise. This is very intentional. He's a janitor. Remember, he's a janitor, and he gets teased, and he's like, "Are you going to be a dick about it?" Right? Like that's I'm a custodian. You know what I mean?
Right.
But that's what I mean. Like a lot of other black comedians are popular in the black community first, right? And then they become popular for multicultural.
I think he cut his teeth in the clubs, in the comedy clubs of DC.
At 15 years old.
Yeah, he started out young.
Right.
But his thing has always been race stuff, white versus black. Yeah. And it's fascinating because his audience is mostly white, I think. Because what he was doing, I don't think it would have worked with a full-on black audience. When you look at it, his stuff was a little different. Even the Chappelle Show was. You get the sense that it's for white people. You know what I mean? It's.
I think that's why he quit. Because you could tell he was unintentionally making a minstrel show.
Right, exactly. He said that.
That's what I mean.
But Chris Rock is the same, by the way. Chris Rock is the same. He went to kind of a middle class. He's from Brooklyn. Yeah, went to a white school. That's when he got picked on a lot. But one Dave Chappelle joke to get back to the point you were making, how he comes from an upper class. He does
not upper, but just educated middle class, and also advisor to Lumumba.
Right. Like an educated bourgeoisie, right? Yeah. And so. He talks about this in the early interviews. Like, you might think about when he's like, my parents are probably smarter than your parents, right? Like, you might look at me a certain way, right? So he said he does this joke in Killing Him Softly, which is one of his breakthroughs. And when he goes back to DC, he's wearing the blue shirt, and the Timbs, and he goes, DC's different. a lot of white people walking around, right? And
Yeah,
it's like
right,
a
right,
really
right.
interesting comment on what Madawi Gerima's film is now about, which is the gentrification of DC in the 90s, right? The destruction of all those communities. So he goes back there, and he has the joke about, and they play this clip on Inside the Actors Studio. James Lipton just died, right? Inside the Actors Studio, and Chappelle, when the clip ends and Lipton gets it and expresses it, Chappelle's like, I can't believe it, like an old, like, upper class white guy gets it. He was like, I'm impressed that you understand that joke, right? Because the joke is about him in a limo, like at 4:00 in the morning. The limo takes him in the wrong direction, in the hood. He looks out the window, drugstore, liquor store.
Yeah.
We're in the ghetto, so he understands, like, this is a commentary, right?
Where the fuck you taking me?
They're flooding us with drugs and liquor. And then he goes to the street corner. He sees a baby on the street corner again. Commentary on, children being, not being raised by their parents. It's sad, but it's like, it's funny. And then he looks out the window and he goes, but he's terrified. He's in a limo and he's terrified. Yeah. Hey, baby, you want to do the joke? Hey, baby. And he goes, hey, baby, what are you doing out on the street? It's 4:00 in the morning. He goes, shh, I'm selling weed, nigga. Oh, that's why you didn't want to do the joke. We're like, so Lipton
he says, I have kids to feed.
Yeah.
Is that what the baby says?
Afterwards, he's like,
I got kids to feed. I forgot that line. Okay. But this is a classic joke. I mean, this is a brilliant joke. This joke contains so many different levels of social commentary,
yes.
And Lipton picks up on it, right? Because he's like an art analyst, right? He's like, it's David in the ghetto. Like, I get it, right? Like, class differences, because Chappelle's like, black people don't want to be in the ghetto. So those, and you're right in all this stuff you talk about, Team A, Team B, and all these political factionalisms that often, that divide and rule stuff, they deploy all those, red meat, not just to the conservatives, but to liberals too, right? About identity and race and ethnicity. Anytime real, like, class contradictions are surfacing.
Yep.
Well,
is that it? I think somebody else should get the last word. How do we wrap up?
There are things of which I may not speak. There are dreams that never die. There are thoughts that make the strong heart weak and bring a pallor into the cheek and a mist before the eye. And the words of that fatal song come over me like a chill. A boy's will is the wind's will, and the thoughts of youth are long, long thoughts.
Who's that by? That's beautiful. Who's that by?
I just made it up. What are you talking about? No, that's Longfellow. William Wordsworth Longfellow.
William Wordsworth Longfellow.
Yeah, it's a Longfellow.
Kidus?
Yeah.
You got any poetry for us? You want to do it like a little dance? You want to mix this with like a drink?
I could dance. So yeah.
By the way, audience, you can't see, but Kidus is doing like an incredible Irish jig. He's doing Michael Flatley. It's too bad we don't have video.
No, wait. That's something different.
That's Kevin Bacon.
Got it.
Good. We have done a tour. Thank you both for coming on. It's wonderful having you in the same room together.
Thank you.
And come back soon. We're going to do a couple more, right, in the next couple of days. Are you planning?
Yes.
Yes, this is still the plan. Kidus, anytime you have a thought, like literally if you have a thought, come on and we'll do an episode. Yeah. You have been listening to Ras Temari Radio, Offense Necessary, where we discuss everything but politics. Have a nice day, everybody.